Chapter 960. Yin Qing was alarmed. With a few flashes, she arrived in the desert. Standing on a sand dune, in the center of the desert, there was a tall and thin figure standing there motionlessly. His hands were holding onto a saber to support his body. His lowered head was pressed against the hilt of the saber. His dry red hair fluttered in the wind, and his face could not be seen clearly. He was covered in wounds. There was basically not a single part of his skin that was unscathed, revealing thick bones that shone with a metallic luster. He seemed so feeble and lifeless. Had he succeeded? Yin Qing was uncertain. She slowed down and arrived beside him carefully. She extended her hand, wanting to touch him, but she retracted it hesitantly. She was worried that the slightest touch would cause him to collapse into dust. A gust of wind blew over, kicking up a cloud of crystalline sand. The dry, messy, scarlet hair drifted in the wind. Suddenly, a speck of scarlet light lit up. It was a scarlet eye. It was like a beautiful ruby, staring at Yin Qing beside him. The gaze was so calm, without the slightest emotion. However, Yin Qing felt her entire body go numb. Her heart trembled as if it had been struck by lightning. She seemed to have been stunned, unable to move. Seeing that it was her, the scarlet eye blinked and became amiable. Yin Qing seemed to wake up from a nightmare, but she took a step back instinctively. She asked in a probing manner, "King?" It was not that she could not recognize Li Qingshan. Instead, the changes that had happened to him left her far too surprised. In the past, he was extremely powerful, far more powerful than regular Azura commanders. He would give off a startling aura from time to time, but he did not possess this kind of breathtaking aura. Even some of the Azura kings she had seen did not possess it. His powerful aura had all been withdrawn and melted away. There was no direct pressure anymore. Instead, it became heavier and heavier. His aura, however, was currently recovering. It was like a grassland that had been scorched by fire had sprouted a few new shoots. They were extremely weak, but they symbolized new life. "Greetings, my king." Yin Qing knelt on one knee and lowered her head. "I'm still alive," Li Qingshan said hoarsely. He seemed to be talking to himself, but also to Yin Qing. The might of the three heavenly tribulations were far greater than he had imagined them to be. The spirit turtle's warning seemed to be saying, "Stop struggling, you're dead meat." After all, after going through 3 months of continuous battles, this was definitely not his best condition. Being forced to directly undergo the tribulation was actually very difficult and even dangerous. However, in the end, he managed to pull through. "Yes." Yin Qing nodded heavily. "Very good." A hearty laugh came from the messy red hair. The laughter grew louder and louder, bringing with it a metallic hum. The wind danced and drifted in the desert. With a clang, he drew his saber and pointed it at the sky. His footsteps staggered, but just now he stood firm. He muttered, "Above the 9 heavens, I'm one step closer." The blood-colored vortex spun like an eye, staring at him. Deep within the demon cave. "This is the Azura arena." "Why? Gong Yuan, did Li Qingshan abandon you and flee?" The bone-eating shaman king grabbed the Azura field. He glared at Gong Yuan viciously. He never thought all of his efforts would end up in vain. As a king, he was knowledgeable. The Azura field possessed an existence similar to the demon cave that led to the Azura realm. Now that the shattered space had already recovered, Li Qingshan must have fled there already. No matter how powerful they were, it was impossible for them to hunt him down in the Azura realm, or it would be terrible if they got sucked into the eternal battle of blood. Gong Yuan was bound up by black brambles. Her beautiful, silken dress was soaked in blood. She spread her slender arms like a butterfly that had fallen into a spider's web, possessing a tragic beauty. Even her deep blue eyes struggled to focus on her. The bone-eating shaman king's voice seemed to ring out from an extremely distant place. She used all of her strength to control her lips and tongue, saying gently, "Don't worry, he'll return." It was exactly because she believed this that she did not choose to die with him. Instead, she helped him fend them off for a while longer, hoping he could undergo the heavenly tribulation safely. However, facing 7 demon kings also meant losing this option forever. That would be a fate even worse than death. Apart from the brambles around her, a purplish-black existence that resembled a brain hovered above her head. There was a terrifying, twisted human face on it, which was the meditative brain king's demonified form. He constantly unleashed his power and influenced her mind. A few demon kings revolved around her, ready to unleash their various techniques. It was enough to make her beg for death. "Fool, you've been tricked. He tricked you into coming from the South Sea to get involved in this mess, and then he tricked you into staying here and dying for him. How foolish." The bone-eating shaman king failed to complete Cheongchi's mission, which filled him with resentment and some fear. He was especially short-tempered. He did not waste his time forcefully breaking and refining the Azura field. Faced with a dire situation like this, anyone would choose to flee. Even if they opened it, it would already be too late. The gazes of the other demon kings in the surroundings were rather gloating. He had paid such a price, yet he still failed. Not a single demon god was known for having a good temper. "You're wrong," Gong Yuan said gently. "I'm wrong. Oh, I seem to remember now. Your younger sister was an idiot just like that. The fire devourers tricked her into coming to Fire Melt Mountain to be burned at the stake. You sure are a pair of good sisters. You're even so foolish in the same way. However, I don't like playing with fire. I only like eating meat. Merfolk are delicious. I've always liked them very much, but I've never tasted the Merfolk queen." The bone-eating shaman king extended his scarlet tongue and licked his lips. He smiled viciously. "You'll live for a very, very long time. I'll carve off your flesh piece by piece and enjoy it slowly. How about it? It'll be a perfect match for your younger sister's death." "Ha, then do you know what happened to Fire Melt Mountain?" Gong Yuan was at ease inside. That guy was so horrible, but she did not regret leaving the South Sea and accompanying him through danger, nor did she resent him for putting her in dire straits. Suddenly, she understood her little sister's feelings back then, and she could not help but smile. They still held on to hope. "How dare you!" The bone-eating shaman king became even more furious. "He'll return. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. He'll find you one by one and get his revenge for today." Gong Yuan's eyes suddenly narrowed, staring at the bone-eating shaman king before her coldly, but she smiled inside. This guy sure knows how to hold grudges. "I'll eat your tongue first." The bone-eating shaman king shivered inside and became even more furious. Suddenly, he opened his gaping mouth and bared his sharp teeth, biting towards Gong Yuan. Gong Yuan shut her eyes. Foul air rushed into her face, but she heard the bone-eating shaman king's roar. The blood-red blade rushed out of the Azura field, plunging into the bone-eating shaman king's head from below. With a twist of the blade, the head was ground to pieces, and the roar came to a halt. Li Qingshan crawled out of the Azura field and said rather tiredly, "This woman's lips belong to me." Chapter 961. Gong Yuan opened her eyes and gazed at his tall, scarred figure. For some reason, her heart ached, feeling both relieved and wronged. She was almost tempted to cry. Li Qingshan turned around and grinned at her. "Sorry to keep you waiting. You're too slow." Gong Yuan grumbled. Suddenly, the bone-eating shaman king's headless body leapt backwards rapidly. As if he had been expecting this, Li Qingshan casually pressed his palm against his chest without even looking back, making his way towards Gong Yuan. The bone-eating shaman king retreated and roared out resentfully, "Li Qingshan, no." Black cracks spread out like a spiderweb, reaching the surrounding space. His body was like the cracked earth. The demon heart hidden deep in his body shattered under the tremors. He died completely. Boom! The power the bone-eating shaman king had accumulated over a millennia after devouring countless lives immediately swept through the entire demon cavern. The demon kings all paled in shock, retreating and defending. Water mirror's image. A smooth mirror appeared behind Li Qingshan. As soon as the terrifying power from the demon heart's explosion came into contact with the mirror, it was reflected back, colliding with the incoming power afterwards and forming a perfect defense. When the mirror shattered, only the fierce wind ruffled his scarlet hair, but the demon king's encirclement was cut off. Only 2 demon kings remained before him. His eyes narrowed, and his mind was as still as water. Everything was going according to plan. From the beginning till the end, he did not give off any aura or murderousness. If he closed his eyes, he would basically forget about his existence. Even though he seemed extremely feeble and exhausted, it only left the demon kings even more shocked. Even someone like him could kill the bone-eating shaman king casually. Was he purposefully acting weak? In fact, Li Qingshan's condition was even worse than what the demon kings had imagined. He had just gone through a life and death struggle with the terrifying heavenly tribulation, so he didn't have any time to recuperate and recover. He didn't even have the time to familiarize himself with his new divine art before he had to fight 7 demon kings. It was extremely dangerous. If he didn't take the initiative and break their encirclement, he would be in danger of dying. But fortunately, the heavenly tribulation wasn't for nothing. The power of the saber and palm wasn't all that powerful. After becoming a demon king, his power had increased substantially, and he could completely control the power of the ox demon transformation and the tiger demon transformation. In the past, he was just a strong and healthy child who often swung his saber and slashed randomly. Although the appearance of flesh and blood flying everywhere was terrifying, who knew how many times it would take to slash an enemy? Now that he had finally grown up, even if he was very weak, a single dagger was enough to kill him. Coupled with the fact that he could suddenly injure someone, which was why he could kill the bone-eating shaman king so easily. However, after blocking the explosion of the demon heart, he had become even weaker right now, and this was a demon cavern. It was far away from the ground, surrounded by space, so the strength of the earth could not be used. However, all he did was maintain his composure, holding on purely through his willpower. Stop right there. Do you want her to die? The meditative brain king unleashed a terrifying aura, threatening Li Qingshan. His consciousness turned into invisible hands, ripping at souls and shaking people's minds. A smear of pain appeared in Gong Yuan's eyes. She gritted her teeth. Don't worry about me, kill them. Li Qingshan frowned and glanced at the meditative brain king angrily, but he did not stop. Gong Yuan suddenly felt her mind ease up. The meditative brain king's control had suddenly vanished, and she raised her head in confusion. Every single fold of the meditative brain king that resembled a brain trembled. The meditative brain king originally wanted to use fear to stun Li Qingshan's mind and use Gong Yuan to threaten him. However, he sensed even greater and deeper fear from Li Qingshan's eye of the tiger demon. A clash of willpower like this had always been the most dangerous, so he immediately suffered an intense backlash. Meditative Brain King, what are you doing? A sharp, ear-piercing voice rang out from the black thorns around Gong Yuan. Li Qingshan, do you still recognize me? I'll kill her first, and then you'll be next. Thousands of black thorns surged over like the tide, filling Li Qingshan's vision. It's King Blackthorn. As he sighed emotionally, he unfurled his glorious wings. The wind danced and the flames blazed. He swung his blade without the slightest hesitation and rushed into the forest of thorns, arriving before Gong Yuan and embracing her firmly. This was already the last of his strength. In the next moment, the thorns wrapped around him firmly, piercing his skin and sucking away his flesh and blood to suppress his demon qi. If that's the case, why did you come back? Gong Yuan blinked her eyes. How could she not sense his current feebleness? Just walking over to her had already put him in life-threatening danger. I've said it before. If you want to kill you, you'll have to step over my dead body first. Li Qingshan smiled. Don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything by that. Gong Yuan suddenly raised her head and kissed him on the lips. The black thorns turned into a huge, black cocoon, and the 4 demon kings who had been forced back by the demon heart explosion surrounded them again. Don't be frightened by him. He seems to have only undergone the 3rd heavenly tribulation recently. Even if he has some tricks up his sleeve, he's just a spent force. He can't put up any resistance now that he's landed in my blackthorn forest. King Blackthorn let out a complacent laugh. Actually, he had been frightened by Li Qingshan's stance earlier too. Only after probing him a little did he discover that was all. It was all thanks to that idiot, the bone-eating king. Now that he had rendered a great service, he would definitely receive evil god Qiongqi's favor. The demon kings looked at one another. They never expected this to be the final outcome. The bone-eating shaman king had gone to great lengths, only to lose his life. Instead, this King Blackthorn benefited from it. The meditative brain king recovered from the backlash and said frantically, Blackthorn, kill them. Meditative brain king, what I, King Blackthorn, do is not something you can tell me. Evil god Qiongqi might want to live. King Blackthorn said. Not only did he not want to, but he was also afraid. Without the meditative brain king's control, Gong Yuan was completely capable of choosing to commit suicide calmly. Even if the meditative brain king took action, he could only control one of them at most. He was not stupid enough to force them to die with him. Instead, he planned on leaving them with a sliver of hope, taking them back to the demon domain and offering them to evil god Qiongqi. The meditative brain king reverted to his original form. His face was sunken, and he dove into the demon domain without even looking back, as if he was running away from something. In the cocoon of thorns, Li Qingshan widened his eyes at first before smiling. He lowered his head and kissed her deeply. Their blood flowed and mingled, but they were completely unaware of it. It was like they had forgotten everything around them, even when they were in dire straits and on the brink of death. Their minds were connected like never before. Apart from her tongue that was as soft as water, what Li Qingshan tasted greedily was an icy-cold sphere that revolved in their mouths, releasing strands of the cold and profound power of Ruin's End. That's right, it was the heart of the abyss. She had swallowed it and hidden it away. With this as a foundation, she connected with the distant Ruin's End. The spirit turtle's method of sea suppression and all water to Ruin's End began circulating at full strength at the same time, supporting and benefiting one another. Chapter 962. Gong Yuan's heart was filled with joy. She forgot about her pain and broke free from the binding of the brambles, embracing Li Qingshan firmly. It was no longer just to break free from this dire situation. It was as if she wanted to sink into his embrace. The all-water to Ruin's End circulated rapidly, with unprecedented smoothness. It no longer had the coldness and loneliness of traversing the abyssal sea alone. A pair of warm arms embraced him firmly. His mind was at peace as their lips and teeth connected. Strands of water to Ruin's End flowed out from the heart of the abyss. Originally, the power was so tremendous that it was difficult to control, but now, it was just enough for them to share. Their hearts were connected. Li Qingshan could clearly sense that she had already fallen in love. His heart also lit up with love. This had never happened during any of their dual cultivation in the past. They were both so proud. Even when they leaned against each other and fought side by side, they would never fall in love with each other, until this moment. In this deep, demonic cavern, what they entrusted to each other was no longer just life and death. There was also absolute trust and an unchanging promise. When they sensed each other's feelings, there was no longer any hesitation. The flames of love piled up like waves, constantly rising. Their minds were completely connected, melding like water. This was no longer just because of love. It was also because of the increase in Li Qingshan's cultivation. The 9 transformations of the demonic and divine went from easy to difficult. With each layer, it would become several times more difficult, but the increase in strength would also multiply. When the ox demon transformation and tiger demon transformation broke through to the 5th layer, they had both turned the tables in dire straits. Now that the spirit turtle transformation had reached the 5th layer, the bloodline of the spirit turtle had become even denser, so it was obviously more compatible with Gong Yuan. Actually, if he wanted to, he could even suppress Gong Yuan's will unilaterally. Of course, he would not do that, but unknowingly, it would still affect her slightly. As long as she practiced the all-water to ruin's end, he would be her natural nemesis. To think you still have such a false heart of love. Kiss me slowly. Kiss me to your heart's content. King Blackthorn sneered inside. Originally, he was still thinking about how to pacify them, just in case they fought to the death, but when he saw how they only embraced each other, it saved him a lot of trouble. In any case, as long as they entered the infernal domain, the outcome would be set. With their strength, they would not be able to stir up any more waves. Li Qingshan used the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to hide his presence and shield himself from the heavenly secrets, which was why King Blackthorn failed to sense it at all. He even thought they knew they were no match for him, so they just gave up. The cocoon-like thorny ball carried Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan through the dark and long devil's cave and flew towards the devil's domain. The 4 demon kings looked at each other, then followed. They thought about how they couldn't let King Blackthorn take all the credit for this battle. King Blackthorn was afraid that a long delay would bring trouble. He was also wary of the 4 demon kings behind him, so he flew at full speed. After a while, a familiar figure appeared in front of him. He was in a good mood, so he greeted him. Meditative Brain King, you sure fly slowly. The Meditative Brain King was not skilled at flying in the first place, and he was injured from the backlash. After distancing himself from King Blackthorn, he slowed down. Just as he furrowed his brows in thought, he suddenly felt a tremendous demon chi approach him. Turning around, he discovered that King Blackthorn had actually caught up to him. He could not help but widen his eyes and curse aloud, "You idiot! Stay further away from me. Are you tired of living?" King Blackthorn was furious as well. "I didn't do anything to you, so what right do you have to curse me?" The black thorns twisted and grew. The Meditative Brain King was renowned for his cautiousness in the demon's domain, but cautiousness was synonymous with cowardice. This was also why he was not skilled in open battles, which was why King Blackthorn was not afraid of him at all. The Meditative Brain King simply ignored him and sped up. Suddenly, he came to a halt, and a black thorn tore through the air, wrapping around his waist. He turned around and said furiously, "King Blackthorn, do you want to fight me? Tell me first. What are you running from?" King Blackthorn asked, feeling that something was off. The Meditative Brain King did not become a demon king solely through cautiousness. He was also famous for his meticulous, sinister, and despicable thoughts. "Fine, let me ask you. Are those 2 willing to return to the demon's domain with you?" The Meditative Brain King was helpless. He could only hope that it was not what he guessed. Why would I care if they're willing or not when they're in my hands?" King Blackthorn said. "Let me go. I'll apologize to you. If you want to go to the demon's domain, then go." The Meditative Brain King's eyelids twitched violently. Although he did not sense anything, the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Li Qingshan had gone through 3 heavenly tribulations with great difficulty. No matter how he looked at it, it did not look like he was here to die for nothing. "I must go the same way as you. What are you doing? This is impossible. How can you still have power?" King Blackthorn suddenly exclaimed in shock and anger. The sound of something freezing came from within his body. Waves of cold air spread in all directions, and traces of frost spread along the thorny vines. Among the layers of thorny vines, Li Qingshan raised his head reluctantly. The time to counterattack had arrived, as a demon king. Gong Yuan opened her eyes. Her dark eyes were as deep as the ocean. She glanced at Li Qingshan, and there was a fleeting hint of gentleness in her eyes. Although his injuries were still severe, the power surging in his body was unprecedentedly great, and he could easily control it. 1,000 miles of ice. Her red lips parted slightly, and a wave of cold air whizzed out. King Blackthorn was immediately frozen into a huge ice ball. King Blackthorn, I still remember you, a loser. You can't escape this time. Li Qingshan said with a smile. His expression became stern. Quake. The ice ball shattered loudly, turning into ice dust. Li Qingshan opened his hand and grabbed a demon heart wrapped in thorns. The thorns shrieked, "Release me, or I'll take you down with me." Li Qingshan spat out another word. Suppress. The figure of a spirit turtle appeared around him, completely suppressing the demon heart. Take me down with you. You're not qualified. He looked up. Alright, you can stop running too. The moment the coldness in King Blackthorn's body spread, the meditative Brain King cut off the thorns around his waist resolutely and flew towards the demon domain at full speed. He heard Li Qingshan's voice, and his body came to a sudden halt. Li Qingshan's left hand wrapped around the meditative Brain King nearby and he bellowed, "Get back here." He erupted with a powerful suction force, and the meditative Brain King immediately flew backwards against his will. Li Qingshan formed a claw with his right hand and accurately grabbed the meditative Brain King's demon heart with the tiger demon digs out the heart. I know the details of the demon domain. I can help you, said the meditative Brain King. Then do you know Cheongqi? This. The meditative Brain King was slightly taken aback. He never thought Li Qingshan would ask a demon god right off the bat, and he was filled with killing intent. Was he thinking of revenge? Then go to hell. Suppress. Li Qingshan fished out a bloody demon heart and suppressed it casually before tossing it into his sumeru ring. Then he turned around and smiled. You've come too. Come, come, come. I'll send you off. Chapter 963. The four demon kings were very far away from Li Qingshan, and the gravity of Earth was beyond his reach. Li Qingshan considered it slightly and was in no hurry to chase after them. Instead, he turned around and returned to Gong Yuan's side. He asked, "Are your wounds fine?" "They're fine." The bloodstains on Gong Yuan had already been cleaned away, and her wounds had all healed up. However, her face was rather pale and frail. There was also an extremely rare hint of softness in her expression, which made this cold and proud merfolk queen particularly alluring. However, after that kiss, their relationship seemed to undergo a slight change. For a moment, she had no idea what to say. After a moment of hesitation, she did her best to recover her cold expression. Don't misunderstand. Misunderstand what? Li Qingshan smiled mischievously. He even licked his lips as if he was savoring the taste. You know. Gong Yuan glared at him viciously, but it was no longer as cold and emotionless as before. Instead, it was slightly angered from embarrassment. Li Qingshan originally wanted to tease her a little more, but he became serious again. Don't worry, I understand. He never hid his desires, but he would never erase his sincerity either. Sometimes, the more sincere one was, the more reluctant one would be to do whatever one wanted. Even if he loved her, it was impossible for him to stay in the South Sea, much less return her infatuation. As a result, all he could do was do this. At the very least, he could not turn love into hatred. Gong Yuan sighed inside and sneered. As long as you understand. At least you haven't undergone the third heavenly tribulation for nothing. You've gained some bearing of a demon king. By now, Li Qingshan had already recovered from his wounds. His exhaustion had vanished as well. He was calm and composed. Even after killing the two demon kings, there was not much killing intent left behind, as if he had just done something insignificant. When she thought about it now, she still found it rather unbelievable. King Blackthorn could be said to have been caught off guard by her successful sneak attack, so it was not strange for him to be killed. However, the meditative Brain King was completely on guard, yet he was still killed so easily. Just how powerful was he right now? You're too kind, too kind. I don't think I have any bearing of a demon king. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. He placed his hand on her shoulder and circulated the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression to heal her wounds. Is that so? But I feel that you have changed a lot. Please keep it up. Gong Yuan closed her eyes. Perhaps it was because of the change in his attitude, he no longer seemed so frivolous and frivolous. There was actually a kind of charm and attraction to him. If it was in the past, he would have taken the opportunity to take advantage of her while he was recuperating to hold her in his arms and take advantage of her. He sighed in his heart. What she didn't realize was that this feeling was very likely due to the change in her heart. Li Qingshan shook his head. The distance between the heart was getting closer, but the body was getting further away. How strange. Gong Yuan's injuries were almost healed. Li Qingshan also took the opportunity to adjust his breathing and familiarize himself with the power of a demon king. Gong Yuan asked, "What should we do next?" There are still 4 demon kings and a 12-citadel demon formation outside. I'm thinking about it. The 4 demon kings did not take Li Qingshan seriously at all. If they cast aside their selfish desires and worked together, they could pose some threat to him, but the possibility of that was almost non-existent. The key was the 12-citadel demon formation of the ominous. Even with his current strength, he had no confidence in breaking out of it. If he clashed with 4 demon kings at the same time, his chances of victory were even higher. Then think about it properly. Gong Yuan said. Don't worry. I'm here. Li Qingshan said confidently. As long as he had the time to comprehend and familiarize himself with the new ability, his strength would definitely reach a whole new level. If it really did not work out, he would just stay here and balance the water and fire, recovering to his peak condition. That way, he would have 3 chances at Nerva rebirth. He would definitely be able to make a breakthrough. I'm afraid we don't have much time. Li Qingshan frowned. He could sense great danger approaching. He turned his head in the direction of the demon domain and waved his hand. Profound light illuminates all. Pieces of the spirit turtle's profound shell flew out, stacking on top of one another like a large telescope. The scene rapidly extended towards the depths of the demon cavern. When he was about to pass through the demon cavern and reach the demon domain, a dark purple color filled the scene. A dark purple demon chi rushed over from the demon domain. It surged violently and was as swift as lightning. It was so fast that even Li Qingshan sighed in amazement. The strength of the demon chi was even more terrifying, filling the entire demon cavern. Wherever it passed by, the demon cavern showed signs of shattering as if it could not contain the demon chi. A demon emperor. Gong Yuan's face changed slightly. Demon kings definitely could not produce such a disturbance. As if it had sensed that it was being spied on, a gaze swept across from the demon chi, and the scene was immediately cut apart, reduced to pieces. Li Qingshan blocked with his blade. With a clang, the blade paused and trembled. A sword slash appeared on it. He could not help but praise, impressive. The newcomer was a demon emperor, and he seemed to be very skilled in fighting and killing. It was very likely that he was the commander who led the demons to attack the 9 provinces this time. Having just undergone the 3rd heavenly tribulation, he had not even familiarized himself with his new abilities, so he was unable to fend off the demon emperor. Let's go. Li Qingshan swung his fist as hard as he could and shattered the space before him, but he could guarantee that he could stop a demon emperor just like that. The difference of a major realm of cultivation was like the difference between clouds and mud. Afterwards, he wrapped his arm around Gong Yuan's waist and flapped his phoenix wings, flying towards the other end of the demon cavern. After becoming a demon king, he had yet to comprehend any new abilities, but his old abilities had improved significantly. Whether it was the range of the profound light illuminates all or the speed of the wings of wind, he seemed to have turned into a fierce gust of wind, arriving at the other end of the demon cavern very soon. Just as he was about to stop and see if the demon emperor had caught up, he felt a huge murderous intent looming over him. The demon emperor had already crossed the broken space and caught up. His main body was clearly still thousands of miles away, but the dark purple demonic energy he released had turned into a torrent of sword chi that flooded the demon cavern. Li Qingshan immediately flew out of the demon cavern with Gong Yuan. The scene in front of him changed, and he once again returned to the southern territory. The skin on his back was tingling, and the torrent of sword chi followed closely behind, rushing out of the demon cavern with unstoppable momentum. Just as the torrent of sword chi was about to engulf them, it seemed to be shackled by something invisible and shattered and dissipated in the air. Even a demon emperor could not break the shackles of the laws of heaven and earth, and even the power he released would be suppressed. The demon emperor stopped hundreds of miles away from the exit of the demon cavern. In the surging demonic energy, there stood a middle-aged man with an unshaven beard and a face full of vicissitudes. He wore hemp shoes and a short brown robe, with a long sword hanging from his waist and another one on his back. He did not look like a ferocious and terrifying demon emperor, but more like an ordinary swordsman walking in the pugilistic world. The suppression from the 9 provinces had become stronger and stronger, and every step forward had to be paid a price. Chapter 964. The night was deep, but the swamp was illuminated. Streaks of resplendent silver light tore through the sky. The Silver Dragon King assumed an offensive stance, unleashing his full power. He seemed to have truly become a furious dragon, roaring and ripping apart the dense demon chi. However, the demon chi that gushed out of the 13 demon caverns was far too dense. The demonic clouds sealed off the sky the entire time. Even if a portion of the 12 demon gods' colossal bodies was destroyed, they would recover very quickly. The king of Southern Yu stood in front of the porthole with his hands behind his back. His face was rather stern. The formation was much more troublesome than he had imagined it to be, and there seemed to be a mastermind behind the scenes controlling it, constantly nullifying the Silver Dragon King's attacks and minimizing the damage. If this continued, the Silver Dragon King would definitely give way first. He turned to the Banyan Tree King and said, "Fellow, there seems to be some existence eyeing this world. The demon plague probably won't end so easily this time." The Banyan Tree King was well versed in formations. He experienced the terror of the mastermind even more deeply than the King of Southern Yu. The 12 Citadel demon formation of the ominous did not operate smoothly. Instead, it felt a little sluggish. Clearly, it was also affected by the laws of heaven and earth. However, the effect of its operation was unbelievably good. It was as if it had completely seen through the Silver Dragon King's attacks and could turn the situation around with just a few pointers. He said rather sternly, "Let's hope it's not like what I think it is." "Fellow, have you noticed something?" the King of Southern Yu asked. "Among the 12 demon gods, one of them hasn't been attacked at all." When the Banyan Tree King saw the formation, he felt the situation was very severe, but he never thought it would be so severe. Cheongqi. The King of Southern Yu thought back slightly and became stunned. Impossible. Does a mere bone-eating shaman king possess such great prestige? Everyone knew that bone-eating shamans worshipped Cheongqi as their ancestor god, but just like how the fire god Zhurong worshipped by the fire devourers, there had always been many ancient names in the south. These higher gods and demons existed in a higher world, so they rarely responded to their believers. Their names could only be passed down in places of wilderness. In the eyes of mortals, the existences of cultivators were akin to gods, Buddhas, and devils. Especially those great cultivators who had undergone the 3rd heavenly tribulation, they were lofty and unreachable. However, the King of Southern Yu understood extremely well that they were only kings among cultivators. They were no closer to immortals, Buddhas, and demons than mortals were to great cultivators. The path of cultivation was extremely long. No great cultivator would pay attention to the battles between mortals because it was not worth it at all, and there was no meaning to it. This was why the king of Southern Yu refused to believe that Xiongqi would interfere with the affairs of the 9 provinces. Just like for him, slaughtering 1 or 2 cities in Qing province would not bring him any closer to victory. There were more important things that he had to deal with. I also hope that my guess is wrong, but the scale of this great formation is definitely not something that a demon king can operate, let alone remotely control. It isolates a world and is restricted by the laws of heaven and earth. Even a demon emperor might not be able to do it. The banyan tree potted plant on the table swayed its branches and turned into an old man. His dark green hair and beard were tangled together, basically obscuring his face. He arrived beside the king of Southern Yu, and his deep, green eyes were filled with worry. The king of Southern Yu fell silent at first before shaking his head and breaking into laughter. If that really is the case, then all of my plans are meaningless. All I can say is that the plans of man outweigh the plans of the heavens. The laws of the world were not absolute. As long as Xiongqi made up his mind and was willing to pay the price, he could turn this world into a demon domain. There were some legendary existences that could even ignore the laws of the world and roam the worlds freely. If it were any other demon god, I would be certain that it's not, but this one is renowned for making trouble out of nothing. The banyan tree king smiled bitterly. Adults would not squat on the ground and burn ants for no reason, but who knew what a child would do? If a child with the power of a god still retained his great curiosity, then no one could guess what he would do. The 2 kings who stood at the apex of the Mist province both frowned in thought as they worried about the unpredictable will of heaven. At this moment, a magnificent streak of light shot over from the southern horizon. Pavilion Master Yi is here. Looks like my side is a little faster. The king of Southern Yu cracked a smile. Looks like your majesty, the king of Yu has already thought it through. The banyan tree king smiled. Even if the sky collapses, there'll be the tall ones to hold it up. This isn't something for us to worry about. If it really reaches that point, we'll just become demon kings at most, unlike those people in the north, the king of Southern Yu said easily. Most of the cultivators of the Mist province were demonic cultivators. Going from demonic cultivators to demon folk was only a single word apart. As for many so-called righteous cultivators, all they could do was endure until the end. For example, the Chan monastery of Devanaga would never compromise. As a result, he could easily settle his grievances with his country and his family. At the very least, fortune and disaster came hand in hand. That's reasonable. Demons and demons have always been the same. The great banyan tree king smiled, but his deep, dark green eyes were filled with unshakable worry. Every world had its own laws. Those who complied would prosper, while those who disobeyed would perish. The hungry ghost realm only took in the dead, while the Azura realm was the home of warriors. If the 9 provinces were converted to the demon domain, then it would definitely be a world where good and evil were reversed, a world that ran amok. If they did not comply with the change, they would be eliminated and destroyed, but if they complied with the change, they would have to twist their own wills. Every place had its own people. They were born in this world and grew up in this world, so they had already been branded deeply. How could it be that easy to change? They could suffer from chi deviation with the slightest carelessness. Even if they managed to keep their lives, they would have severed their path of cultivation. As a result, no one could remain uninvolved in a war between worlds like this. The king of Southern Yu had only said it casually, or he would have colluded with the demon domain a long time ago and turned the Mist province into the demon domain's main base of invasion. With the assistance of several dozen demon kings, how was the Green province supposed to stop them? And, if he really did that, his king of Yu's estate would immediately fall apart. Even if most of his guests were demonic cultivators, committing evil for the sake of power and satisfying their desires was not the same as reversing good and evil. However, demons were a little different, as demons could not be considered good or evil, nor did they care about morals and etiquette. They obediently adhered to the natural law of survival of the fittest, so even if they fell into the demon domain, they would only become a little more violent and vicious. Perhaps they might even adapt to it better. As a result, it did make some sense for the word demon to be linked together. If it were not for his great plan, the banyan tree king could have had it even easier than the king of southern U. So be it, so be it. I'm just an old tree. Though, in terms of speed, my side is still a little faster. Chapter 965. So the Shadow Queen has arrived. The king of southern U shivered inside. She really was worthy of being the king of assassins of the Mist Province to be able to infiltrate the Silver Dragon King silently. Greetings, your majesty. Yi Weiyang bowed and drifted over gently, arriving beside the banyan tree king. She placed her elbow on his shoulder. You sure have gone to great lengths for that kid. How enviable. How impudent. The banyan tree king slapped her hand away and shook his head. He's in dire straits right now, so what's there to be envious of? The Shadow Queen is right. Li Qingshan has either surrendered or died right now. If Qiongqi really has interfered, then everything we do will be futile. Who knows how many people will die before the 12 Citadel Demon formation of the ominous, said the king of southern U. It was not just Yi Weiyang who was unwilling to approach the formation. Even he was unwilling. It was impossible to get through the formation with the long-range attacks of the Silver Dragon King alone. Yi Duanhai flew around the 12 Citadel Demon formation of the ominous on a streak of light. He also maintained a relatively great distance, afraid to approach it. Only afterwards did he arrive in the Silver Dragon King. Greetings, your majesty, and senior. Just what's going on with this demon cavern? The king of southern U told them everything that had happened, including his guess about Qiongqi. Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan are in there. Yi Duanhai frowned. After all, they had fought together before, and they had purged the demons in the south, which took a lot of pressure off him. What do you think? The king of southern U asked. The chances are slim, said Yi Duanhai. Look. The banyan tree king pointed out, and 4 demon kings emerged from the demon cavern in the center of the formation. What extravagance! 4 demon kings working together. Even without the formation, they're not their opponent. Yi Weiyang said. But they seem to be fleeing. The banyan tree king keenly noticed that the 4 demon kings didn't seem like they were going to accept the challenge calmly. Instead, they seemed to be in a rush and seemed impatient. That's a demon cavern. Who could make them flee? Don't tell me. The king of southern U and the banyan tree king exchanged glances. They did not quite believe this explanation either. Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan definitely did not possess the strength to do that, let alone in a demon cavern. However, when the demon kings looked at the Silver Dragon King in the sky, they did not assume an attacking stance. Instead, they turned around and guarded the demon /S den, looking into it. This further proved the banyan tree king /S judgment. They were indeed fleeing. Compared to the 12 Citadel Demon formation of the ominous being breached, they were more afraid of their retreat being cut off. Wait. Yi Duanhai said. If the demon kings really were fleeing, then there must be someone chasing after them. He believed they would find out very soon. Hiss, hiss. Kings of Yin and Yang, flying zombie king, if that Li Qingshan is bold enough to chase after us later, we'll set up an ambush here and catch him off guard. What do you think? The 9-headed king said together as he swung his 9 snake heads. All right. He's definitely not our opponent in the 12 Citadel Demon formation of the ominous. The male and female voices said together. The flying zombie king nodded silently, expressing his agreement. They're coming. The demon kings did not wait for too long. A while later, there was a flash of light in the demon cavern, but the demon king's first reaction was not to stop him. Instead, they scattered. None of them were stupid enough to believe the nine-headed king and face Li Qingshan head-on. Unless they relied on their strength and outnumbered him, it was basically impossible for the demon kings to work together and fend off a powerful enemy. Moreover, the meditative brain king and the other two demon kings had been slain was far too horrific. In the Silver Dragon King, the king of Southern Yu and the others looked at one another. They were not just being hunted down. They were basically scared out of their wits. They possessed such a great geographical advantage, yet they did not even dare to fight. Were they still the vicious demon kings in their memories? In the blink of an eye, a gust of wind and fire rushed into the air. It's them. The banyan tree king's eyes lit up. Yi Duanhai's expression changed because of the flood of sword qi that tailed closely behind. He was well versed in the path of the sword. A sword move like that definitely could not be used by a demon king. The path of the sword it contained completely surpassed his own. Was it a demon emperor? I've finally returned. The flood of sword qi collapsed, and Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief. He still had to run quickly. It was still a little too early for him to treat a demon emperor as an opponent. He looked up at the Silver Dragon King on the horizon and waved his hand with a smile. The gazes of the 12 demon gods turned into a tremendous pressure, almost suffocating him. However, after returning to the ground, the strength of the earth also began to come into effect. Endless power surged out violently, resisting the pressure. After becoming a demon king, all of his innate abilities had become stronger, and his body had undergone an overwhelming change. Li Qingshan saw how Gong Yuan's face was rather pale, so he pulled her into his arms. We'll be able to leave very soon. Then he looked at the 4 demon kings below and saw that none of them had any intentions of doing anything, so he eased up even more. Originally, he was worried that it would be difficult for him to escape, but looking at it now, the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous was not as terrifying as he imagined it to be. Coupled with the helpers outside, as long as the Silver Dragon King tore open a crack in the formation, they would be able to escape successfully. The King of Southern Yu raised an eyebrow. Things seemed to be growing more and more out of his imagination. The 4 demon kings were being hunted down, and there was even a demon emperor right behind them. There was even Qiongqi lurking within. Just what had Li Qingshan done? I see. He's already undergone the 3rd heavenly tribulation. The banyan tree king smiled extremely happily. Yi Weiyang shook her head. Isn't it still a dead end? The 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous was so large that even the king of Southern Yu dared not approach it, afraid of being sucked into the formation, let alone staying in the formation. It was basically impossible for him to survive. The banyan tree king said to the king of Southern Yu, please attack with your full strength and open up a path to save them. All right. The king of Southern Yu said. Right when he was about to activate the dragon's roar, a voice directly rang out in his head, all right, if you've messed around enough, you can go back. The expressions of Yi Weiyang and the others changed too. Clearly, they had also heard this voice. Evil god Qiongqi. As if he could sense their fear, Qiongqi sneered. I have no interest in your mediocre world, so don't flatter yourself. Stop interfering with my game, or I don't mind paying a small price. The Silver Dragon King fell silent and stopped all of his attacks. Infuriating an evil god was definitely not a wise decision. It also gave rise to a sense of doubt. Since Qiongqi's objective was not this world, why had he descended? Even powerful evil gods would have to pay quite a heavy price to pass through the barriers between worlds and resist the suppression of the laws of the world. Just what was the game he spoke of? What's going on? Li Qingshan asked in confusion. Heavy killing intent pressed over. The 4 demon kings that originally had no interest in fighting actually surrounded him again. Originally, they were waiting for the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous to unleash its power and crush Li Qingshan and the Silver Dragon King to smithereens, but nothing happened. Instead, a voice directly rang out in their heads. Don't be a coward. Go kill him. The voice was not vicious or dignified. Instead, it was full of interest, filled with anticipation and joy. Chapter 966. Within the Silver Dragon King, the King of Southern Yu and the Banyan Tree King exchanged glances. They were both deeply fearful. Let's cancel the gathering. The King of Southern Yu let out a long sigh, while the Banyan Tree King nodded silently. There was also a hint of helplessness in his dark green eyes. Let alone the fact that it was impossible for them to save Li Qingshan at the risk of angering an evil god. Even if they were willing to take the risk, it was basically impossible for them to save him. The difference in strength was just too great. This was the dignity of a god. Who knew how many worlds separated them, but a single word was a decree. Qingshan, even if the Dragon King of the Sea came charging over, I could protect you a little, but there's nothing I can do about Qiongqi. The Banyan Tree King sighed inside. The King of Southern Yu had never thought that what caught Qiongqi's attention was not this world, but a mere person. Moreover, it seemed like even this world was insignificant compared to him. He thought, Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan, just what kind of secrets do you possess? The Silver Dragon King withdrew from the demonic clouds and cast a huge shadow, expressing its submission to the will of a god. Under the illumination of the moon, it shone with resplendent silver light, but it still seemed to be enveloped by a shadow, losing its original luster. What do we do? Gong Yuan asked with a frown. Without the assistance of the Silver Dragon King, there was basically no hope for them to get out of the formation from the inside. I'm thinking. Li Qingshan shrugged. He had just entered a wolf's den, and now he had entered a tiger's lair. He was in dire straits after dire straits, but his fighting spirit only rose higher and higher. Gong Yuan agreed and leaned her head against his shoulder gently. Thick demon qi permeated the battlefield that the 12 demon gods overlooked. The 9-headed king that was as colossal as a mountain raised its 9 huge snake heads high up, coiling around Li Qingshan. Its 18 snake eyes stared at him as the turbid liquid in its mouth constantly surged. The flying zombie king had also completely demonized. From a bony man, he had turned into a giant zombie with protruding fangs and black fur. He spread his bat wings and flew through the demonic clouds. He occupied a high vantage point and was ready to attack. The Yin-Yang King's demonic form was the strangest. He was tiny, and his body was fused together like a conjoined baby. He had 3 legs and 4 arms, and his body was even smaller than a normal person's. He crawled unsteadily in the swamp, and he looked at Li Qingshan with hatred. The demonic qi he gave off was the strongest. In the process of Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan wiping out the demons, only the Yin-Yang King wasn't defeated. Instead, he forced them to retreat with his own strength. The 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous was a great form of suppression and restraint to Li Qingshan, but it was of great benefit to the 4 demon kings. The restraint from the surroundings had completely vanished, as if they had returned to the demon domain. The demon qi they had expended was immediately replenished, and their condition reached an unprecedented peak. It was like they had advanced by a minor realm of cultivation. They cast aside their grudges and vigilance, connecting their minds and advancing and retreating together. This proved once again that the only thing that could make demon folk cooperate well was the orders of those above them. Demon god Qiongqi has actually directly descended his will for this guy, the 9-headed king said. That person's thoughts have always been the hardest to guess out of the 12 demon gods. This Li Qingshan really is abnormally powerful. How can he possess such strength after undergoing the 3rd heavenly tribulation, the Yin-Yang King said. Let's not worry about that. Can't we kill him in the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous? The flying zombie king said. That's right. They sensed the power surging through their bodies and were filled with confidence and fighting spirit. Their murderousness grew heavier and heavier, mixing with the surging demon qi. Li Qingshan sucked in a deep breath. Faced with dire straits, the tiger demon's battle spirit surged, and his blood boiled even more. The tiger's fang blade on his waist thrummed. However, in his arms, Gong Yuan's face became paler and paler. The wounds that he had just recovered from were spreading again. Even when he was wrapped in thorns, he remained unfazed, but right now, his brows were tightly furrowed. He was in unbearable pain as his body trembled gently. The 12 Citadel Demon formation of the ominous, which had the 12 demon caverns as its foundation and evil god Qiongqi personally presided over, was far too powerful. There was no need for him to purposefully power it. Just the pressure alone was enough to kill regular great cultivators. The fact that Gong Yuan could last until now could already be regarded as a testament to his tough willpower and extraordinary cultivation, and it was all thanks to Li Qingshan's assistance. Go rest. Li Qingshan took out the Azura field. Gong Yuan bit her lip and shook her head gently. Don't worry. These guys aren't my opponent at all, but if you insist, I'll fight with you in my arms. A single arm is enough anyway. Li Qingshan feigned ease. Just when he was about to stow the Azura field away, Gong Yuan grabbed his hand. After an internal struggle, she understood that she had already become a burden. It was better for him to fight alone than working together. She raised her head and kissed him on the lips, passing the heart of the abyss to him. She stared at him. Promise me, don't die. How can I? I haven't had enough of that yet. Li Qingshan pursed his lips and swallowed the heart of the abyss. With that kiss, Gong Yuan had completely passed the heart of the abyss to him. Although he did not practice the all-water to ruin's end, he could use it freely with his spirit turtle bloodline. Coupled with the strength of the earth, it was equivalent to having an inexhaustible source of power. He became even more confident about this battle. Behind the porthole, Yi Weiyang widened her eyes. Through the thick demon qi, she saw this. She was even more shocked than when she heard Qiongqi's voice. She doubted whether the Gong Yuan she saw was the one she knew. They were both other folk kings who ruled over races. Even if their relationship could not be regarded as friendly, they still had some connections. Gong Yuan was a great iceberg that was bone-chilling, yet she had actually taken the initiative to offer a kiss to a man. This world sure was crazy. After sending Gong Yuan into the Azura field, Li Qingshan casually drew his blade and glanced at the 4 demon kings around him calmly. He asked, "What are you waiting for? I'll let you enjoy the moment before you die. When I kill you, you'll feel even more pain." The lords of Yin and Yang cackled together. The voices of a man and a woman overlapped. It was extraordinarily ear-piercing and unpleasant, upsetting everyone. The demon kings were in no hurry to attack. The longer they delayed, the greater the effects of the 12 Citadel demon formation of the ominous. They might even win without fighting. With the meditative brain king and the others as examples, they dared not be careless at all. Thank you. Then let me enjoy it a little longer. Li Qingshan yawned and stretched. He actually laid down in the air with his arms as a pillow, as if he really wanted to sleep for a while. You're just bluffing. I'd like to see how long you can last. The lords of Yin and Yang said. Li Qingshan's body had always been tough. Due to the 4 bloodlines of the 9 transformations of the demonic and divine, the phoenix and spirit turtle were filled with a divine nature, so they could not be suppressed so easily. The ox demon and tiger demon were demons among demons, and the cultivation method he mainly practiced as a human was the demon suppression statuary, condensing a demon heart in his body. Therefore, the 12 Citadel demon formation of the ominous did not suppress him as much as it suppressed Gong Yuan. In addition, he could use the heart of the abyss to communicate with the bottomless ruin, so his losses could be recovered to a certain extent. As long as there were no intense battles, it would not be a problem for him to stay here for 10 days. Chapter 967. Under the gazes of the 12 demon gods and the 4 great demon kings, Li Qingshan supported his head with one hand and lay sideways in the surging demon qi. He closed his eyes as if he was really sleeping soundly. You fools, how long do you want me to wait? In just a moment, Qi's roar resounded in the Demon King's sea of consciousness. The 4 great Demon Kings trembled and came to their senses. They could wait, but Qi couldn't. He had to pay a price for every second that he sent his consciousness into this world. He wasn't here to watch Li Qingshan sleep. Die. Li Qingshan. The 4 great Demon Kings didn't dare to hesitate and attack together. The 9 ferocious and huge snake heads spewed out torrential turbid flows at the same time. They were like 9 mountain torrents that rolled over with sand and rocks. However, this wasn't an ordinary mountain torrent. It was a venom that could pollute one's soul and erase one's spirituality. The flying zombie king retracted his wings and swooped down from the sky like a black eagle hunting for its prey. His fingernails protruded out and turned into sharp hook-like claws. They were as black as ink and soaked in corpse poison. The Yin-Yang king opened his 2 mouths and let out a sharp cry that sounded like a crying baby. A male and a female voice chased each other and converged. They actually reached Li Qingshan's body first and rushed into his every pore. It was like a demonic sound penetrating his brain and tearing his heart and lungs. Li Qingshan frowned slightly. He seemed to be stunned by the demonic sound and couldn't move. A black shadow flashed and the flying zombie king's pitch-black hook-like claws grabbed his head. We won. The flying zombie king was delighted. The power of his hook-like claws was no weaker than a demonic treasure. In the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil killing array, it was even more powerful. Not to mention flesh and blood, it could even tear apart flying swords made of metal. Then, he was submerged in the turbulent turbid flows. The demonic sound continued to reverberate. It's over. Yi Weiyang withdrew her gaze. She didn't expect him to die in such a useless way. He couldn't even resist. However, if she fell into the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil killing array, she would probably have no choice but to face death. She wouldn't be able to use any of her powerful techniques. Not yet. The Banyan Tree King said solemnly. Although he couldn't see Li Qingshan's situation clearly because of the formation, he believed that Li Qingshan wasn't someone who would die so easily. The flying zombie king let out a cry of surprise amidst the surging turbid flow. The tip of his claw landed on Li Qingshan's head, but it encountered a layer of extremely tough obstruction. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to penetrate it. Unknowingly, Li Qingshan's skin was covered with a layer of light green, and a pair of ox horns on his head were bent. Lying on his side, he was like a winding mountain, or a lying oxen, allowing the turbid currents to bombard his body, but he didn't move an inch. This was his first new divine ability, Ox Demon Forges Its Hide. That's right, it was the move that he had practiced before. Innate divine abilities all originated from the demon's innate ability. The water tribe could control water and cast some water spells, but the power and effect were usually very ordinary. Only when it was truly transformed into an innate divine ability would it be considered a truly powerful trump card. The ox hide on his body was originally tough, but as his combat level increased, its effect became less and less. Any opponent could tear his ox hide apart, and he often had to rely on his tiger bones to support himself. However, if his flesh and blood were damaged, it would actually have a considerable impact on his combat strength. After experiencing many years of battles, he had finally turned this ox hide into a true innate divine ability, Ox Demon Forges Its Hide. It was ordinary and simple like the iron shirt that was popular in the Jianghu, but it had an extremely strong defense. Just as the flying zombie king was using all his strength, Li Qingshan suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if 2 scarlet stars were flashing within them, and he reached out to grab the flying zombie king. The flying zombie king only felt his vision darken. The huge green hand actually gave him the illusion that it could cover the sky. He instantly understood that the suppression on Li Qingshan was definitely not as great as he had imagined. The flying zombie king did not continue fighting. He flapped his wings and quickly retreated. He was extremely fast to begin with, and he was only able to escape with his life from Li Qingshan last time. Now, he was even more confident in his own speed. Otherwise, he would not have dared to launch a surprise attack at close range after witnessing the meditative Brain King's death. "Stay here," Li Qingshan said in a deep voice. The huge green hand was like a green cloud that directly covered the flying zombie king. He kept changing his hand gestures, and the gravity of Earth was no longer purely pulling and pulling. Instead, it was fluctuating, dispelling the flying zombie king's momentum. The flying zombie king's eyes widened, and a demonic aura erupted from his body. His black hair stood on end, and he tried his best to flap his wings, but he could not escape from the shadow of the huge hand. He cried out in fear, "Help me, quick!" A turbid current pierced through the air like a surging river, separating the flying zombie king and Li Qingshan. This was not a duel, but a siege. The flying zombie king felt his body relax, and the invisible and terrifying suction force instantly disappeared. He was still in a state of shock, and he never expected that he would almost fall into Li Qingshan's hands in just one exchange. If he was facing other opponents, he would not be afraid of close combat. His physique could be considered strong even among demon kings. His black hair could withstand the bombardment of treasures, and he had no shortcomings in defense, attack, or speed. However, when he thought of Li Qingshan's fist that could even shatter the void, he did not dare to resist at all. He decided to first adopt a strategy of attrition. Boom! The turbid river suddenly shattered, and a scarlet tiger with a long saber in its mouth leaped out. Its monstrous evil aura surged through the turbid currents. The flying zombie king's body trembled, and he was intimidated by the pair of tiger eyes. When he came back to his senses, he realized that the scarlet tiger was Li Qingshan. He raised the long saber with both hands, and the blood-colored saber astral slashed down like an unstoppable bolt of furious lightning. How can he be so fast? The flying zombie king extended his claws to block, but just as this thought flashed through his mind, all 10 of his sharp claws were broken and scattered. The blood-colored saber astral slashed him in the middle. If you had half the bravery of the martial chief king, you could still be considered an opponent. Li Qingshan's expression and appearance changed greatly. His scarlet hair fluttered like raging flames, and his blood boiled all over his body. His calm expression became ferocious and furious, and his body was no longer pale green. Instead, it was mottled with scarlet stripes like tiger stripes, interweaving to form a king character on his forehead. This was his second new divine ability, Tiger Demon Fury. It allowed him to overdraft his stamina, spirit, and even his lifespan. He also gave up all his defenses and instantly erupted with astonishing combat power. Slaughtering this kind of demon king that had no intention to fight was like slaughtering a dog. The flying zombie king was slashed in half, but he still tried his best to glue his broken body back together with his devil chi in an attempt to escape. Break! Li Qingshan stood with his saber in hand, and he roared angrily. The power of the tiger demon's breath divine ability was completely infused into this roar. The fierce wind was like a strong gale, and it slashed and scattered the flying zombie king. There was a loud boom, and heaven and earth trembled. Violent energy surged in all directions. The flying zombie king had detonated his demon heart. After seeing the meditative brain monarch and King Blackthorn's fate, he no longer hoped that Li Qingshan would let him live. Even if Li Qingshan was willing to let him go, demon god Qiongqi wouldn't let him go. He could only infuse all his hatred into self-detonation. Li Qingshan flapped his wings and retreated in a hurry. He could not use the ox demon forges its hide right now. In his berserk state, his speed reached a whole new level, but he was still slower than the terrifying shockwaves. He was swallowed by the black demon chi that was laced with corpse poison. A demon king has self-detonated. Yi Weiyang was surprised. Due to the obstruction of the formation and demon chi, all methods of investigation were rendered useless. They could only directly see with their eyes. Only now did the kings among the Silver Dragon King sense it. The king of Southern Yu and Yi Duanhai exchanged glances. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Demon kings would never choose to self-detonate unless they were forced into dire straits. Under such horrible circumstances, Li Qingshan had actually managed to kill a demon king. In the past, before Li Qingshan had undergone the third heavenly tribulation, he had already demonstrated startling battle prowess, but he was still an entire major realm of cultivation away after all. He was still unable to threaten the king of the Mist Province and the great sword cultivator of the South Sea. And, he had worked with the Merfolk Queen during the Battle of Fire Melt Mountain and the cleansing of the Demon Cavern, so it was very easy for people to misunderstand that he only played a supporting role. It was only at this moment that they felt a great shock. He had taken on 4 demon kings alone, and he had done it under the suppression of the colossal demonic formation. What kind of concept was that? Yi Duanhai personally believed he could not achieve that unless he chose to perish together with them. The king of Southern Yu was confident, but that was based on his millennia of cultivation and the 10 millennia of the kingdom of Yu's accumulation. Just how old was Li Qingshan? 50. Gazing at the banyan tree king's back, he said from the bottom of his heart, "I can't help but admire your wisdom and insight." If this kid was given another 50 years, would there still be anyone in the 9 provinces who would be his opponent? A pity. A pity. Although he was not on good terms with Li Qingshan, and there was even a hidden hostility between them, he could not help but sigh in pity when he saw a genius die like this. No one could do anything about being targeted by a demon god. The banyan tree king stared at the battlefield in the distance and said nothing. In the past, when he referred to Li Qingshan as fellow, it was actually mostly because of his peaceful and natural nature. Of course, it was also because he admired Li Qingshan's potential, which was why he gave him such recognition. However, never did he think he would rise up so quickly, shine so brilliantly, and die so helplessly. He was like a resplendent comet streaking across the sky. If Li Qingshan's opponents were only 4 demon kings, then he definitely would not hesitate to place all of his hopes on him, hoping that he could carve out a path of survival in dire straits. However, his opponent was a demon god. A victory like that would only add a little more solemnity to it. After the shockwaves of the demon heart's explosion passed, the battlefield froze momentarily. The 9-headed king and the kings of Yin and Yang struggled to believe the flying zombie king had died in battle. They were also intimidated by that person's bearing, so they momentarily forgot to attack. Li Qingshan stood in the sky. His robust body was covered in traces of corrosion from the corpse poison, but it did not diminish his surging murderousness at all. His face was radiant, without the grief of a hero at the end of his road. Instead, there was only the heroic spirit of fighting against the world. He looked down at the 9-headed king and the kings of Yin and Yang like a tiger looking at a lamb, waiting for him to feast on it. Yi Weiyang shook her head gently and sighed inside, no wonder even that ice woman has moments of passion. He's basically tempting me right now. Chapter 968. The other snake heads hissed at the same time. Their yellow tongues moved in and out. They opened their mouths and bit at Li Qingshan like mountains. Break! 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 Li Qingshan bellowed out repeatedly. The 4 snake heads basically collapsed at the same time, like the collapse of a mountain, revealing a dark red fracture. Demon blood surged out violently, spraying into the air like a downpour. The kings of Yin and Yang silently arrived behind Li Qingshan. Suddenly, they opened their mouths, but no sound came out. The demonic sound had already surpassed the limits of hearing, becoming silent and undetectable. It surged towards Li Qingshan faster than the speed of sound. Li Qingshan's figure twisted and dissipated in the demonic sound. Afterimage? Yin-Yang Lord's eyes popped out in disbelief. As demon kings, they could only see afterimages. A red bolt of lightning tore through the sky. It was a blood-red blade aura. It streaked across the sky and left behind a zigzag trail. Without any warning, the huge snake heads broke off and fell into the swamp. A loud rumble resounded, and muddy water filled the air. The red lightning paused and revealed Li Qingshan. He sucked in a deep breath, and the wings of wind and fire on his back unfurled to several hundred meters. His blood surged like it was about to be set alight. He swung his blade at the nine-headed king's final head. Hiss hiss. It's useless. I admit you're strong, but it's useless. This is your best. But it's still far from. Boom. The snake heads turned into minced meat. Li Qingshan retracted his fist and bathed in demonic blood. Nine-headed king's voice came from behind him again. Not enough. The snake head that had been shattered by his shout grew back again. Mountains rose up one after another. Those were the snake heads of the nine-headed king. They opened their mouths at the same time, and their voices reverberated through the mountains. You can't kill me. I'm the real nine-headed snake here. Although the nine-headed king had some of the Hydra's bloodline, and his life force and recovery ability were very strong, he would not die as long as he did not destroy all of his snake heads, but he was not a real Hydra after all. The power of the demon heart was limited, and the snake heads could not grow continuously. However, in this 12 citadel demon formation of the evil, not only did his vitality and recovery ability increase by a level, but he also had the support of an endless supply of magic power. It was as if he had truly become that legendary unkillable Hydra. How long can you maintain this state? Give up resisting. You won't be able to win. Why don't we put in a good word for you with evil god Cheong-chi? Maybe evil god Cheong-chi will be magnanimous enough to accept you as one of us. The Yin-Yang Lord's voice suddenly changed. The male voice was filled with magnetism, while the female voice was as gentle as water, filled with bewitchment. However, his heart was filled with vicious killing intent. Cheong-chi's order was to kill Li Qingshan, so they definitely could not hold back and leave behind a potential threat like him. He said this because he was shocked by Li Qingshan's strength. At the same time, he could tell that Li Qingshan could not maintain his berserk state for too long. He would definitely fall into a deep state of weakness afterwards, and the corpse poison was currently spreading. As long as Li Qingshan relaxed his battle intent and revealed a sliver of a desire to live, he would be dead for sure. The kings among the Silver Dragon Kings were all sharp-witted, so they could immediately tell that this was a trap. However, as the saying went, the onlooker had a clearer view of the situation. Who wouldn't want to grab onto a life-saving straw when they were in dire straits? The Banyan Tree King even hoped that Li Qingshan would agree to it. Even logically speaking, this was his only chance of survival. If demon god Cheong-chi really did favor him, perhaps he might decide to spare his life. However, this was also the possibility that the king of Southern Yu worried about the most. After personally witnessing Li Qingshan's strength, he struggled to imagine just what kind of demon king he would become if he joined the demon domain. Born in this world, he would not be bound by the laws of the world at all. He could leave the demon cavern and roam the world freely. Killing him would be even more difficult than killing 10 demon kings. If he was given sufficient time to grow, he would probably become the master of this new demon domain. Ha 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 ha. Just as they thought about this in particular and became anxious, laughter suddenly erupted. It reached their ears from the distant battlefield. The laughter was so loud and clear that even the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous could not stop it. Li Qingshan laughed madly as if he had heard some kind of joke. For a moment, the wind and clouds surged, and demon chi surged. His figure rapidly expanded. 3 meters, 30 meters, 300 meters, 1,500 meters, 1,500 meters, he climbed to a height of over 1,000 meters. Just now, he stopped, turning into a towering body of the demonic and divine. With a great rumble, iron hooves stomped the ground. The pair of curved horns on his head almost touched the low-hanging demonic clouds. He was on equal footing with the 12 demon gods around him. The nine-headed king tried her best to straighten her snake head, but she still had to look up at his figure. Compared to his figure, the nine-headed king was no longer a monster that was as large as a mountain, but a strange snake with 9 heads. Use your full strength. Ha! A member of you? Ha! Li Qingshan's laughter rumbled like thunder, descending from the sky. Suddenly, he shook his arms and extended his tiger claws, revealing his sharpness. The tiger's tail swung behind him, wrapping around a huge, blood-red blade that let out the sound of ripping through the air. Die, all of you! In that instant, Li Qingshan moved. He swung, galloped, and leapt about. He was like a scorching war dance that originated from ancient times. There were no steps or rhythm, only joy from the bottom of his heart. Even if he was clumsy and in a sorry state, he was fighting for survival. The wind danced with the tiger. The roaring wind turned into a wild song that rang through the sky. Li Qingshan's colossal figure blurred, turning into a spinning storm. The sharp claws and blood-red blade aura were like bolts of lightning within the storm. The nine-headed king was originally hesitating about whether she should take advantage of Li Qingshan's enlarged figure to wrap around him and take a few bites, but when she saw this, she retreated madly. However, in the blink of an eye, the storm had already arrived before her. It was unavoidable and unstoppable. No! The nine-headed king let out a despairing cry, merging with the wind perfectly. How could a war song not contain the wails of the enemy? The 9 snake heads were sucked into the storm one after another, reduced to a rain of blood. Even her colossal body was devoured by the storm. Boom! The deafening explosion of the demon heart's self-detonation brought an abrupt end to this violent battle dance. The storm vanished. The king of Southern Yu and the others were all dumbfounded. The sight before them had already surpassed their imaginations. Their hearts thumped heavily, still submerged in the lingering charm of the battle. Yi Weiyang pursed her lips. What a good man! The demonic clouds were torn apart, and the silver moon shone down like a glorious curtain. Chapter 969. A layer of the swamp had been blown away by the storm, revealing the fresh soil below. It was soaked in the nine-headed king's demon blood. With a gentle breeze, Li Qingshan's scarlet hair danced in the wind. The soil in the distance trembled, and a strange-looking conjoined twins crawled out. They were the kings of Yin and Yang. Li Qingshan glanced at them and could not help but smile. I was looking for you. The kings of Yin and Yang lay on the ground, covered in a few bloody wounds from the wind. They stared at Li Qingshan resentfully, but they struggled to hide their fear. They did not want to face the terrifying storm a second time. If it were not for Qiongqi's orders, they would not be hiding in the ground. They would have directly fled. Li Qingshan, stop bluffing. You've already lost. Just like last time, we're the final victors. 2 mouths spoke at the same time. The voices of a man and a woman crisscrossed and trembled. Is that so? Li Qingshan's face was as calm as still water. Under the moonlight, his skin was so pale that it was almost transparent. Purplish-black liver mortis spots appeared as yellowish marks spread across his skin. This was the price he had paid to kill the flying zombie king and nine-headed king. Even he could not completely ignore the power of the demon heart's self-destruction. The feeling of weakness after going berserk seeped deep into his bones. Even taking a step seemed rather difficult. Normally, he would not have been so weak, but this was the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous. If it were not for the support of the strength of the earth and the heart of the abyss, he probably would have collapsed already. However, he slowly raised his blade, and its edge flickered under the moonlight. With a flash, the kings of Yin and Yang suddenly retreated 5 kilometers away, staring at him in fear. The demon king has been scared out of his wits, but he's powerless to fight anymore. The king of Southern Yu said with some pity. Just now, the violent power was basically startling. If it were not for the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous, it would probably be even more terrifying. However, as the saying went, prosperity is bound to decline. The banyan tree king fell silent. Li Qingshan laughed aloud at the sky, but his laughter was filled with weakness. He lowered his blade powerlessly. I'm too tired. Let's rest up for now. As he said that, he just lay down on his back and gazed at the bright moon through the cracks in the clouds. He said softly, "Brother Ox, how satisfying. Life is not lived in vain. You dare to scare me?" The Yin-Yang Lord was furious and flew into the sky. It let out a terrifying demonic roar, but it still maintained a sufficient distance from Li Qingshan. "Bastard, you blocked the moonlight. Forget it, I'll kill you first." As Li Qingshan said that, he continued to lie there without moving. The spirit turtle's profound shell flew out, forming a smooth, mirror-like surface. The demonic sound landed on the surface of the mirror and was reflected back at the Yin-Yang Lord. Puff! The Yin-Yang King spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Every inch of his body trembled violently. He could clearly feel how powerful his demonic voice was. This was Li Qingshan's third divine ability, terminal lucidity. It was rather similar to the Ox Demon's new ability. They were both independent abilities that he already possessed, going from being useless to an ability that could truly stand on its own. However, unlike the Ox Demon forges its hide, terminal lucidity was more suitable for dealing with techniques, and it could be regarded as both attack and defense. If it were another time and place, this ability might have been able to unleash wondrous effects, but it seemed rather powerless in the current situation. The Spirit Turtle's abilities had always focused on defense and support. Terminal lucidity. TSK, how inauspicious. Li Qingshan mumbled to himself. He considered whether he should change the name or not. Is this your trump card? What a pity. I just want to watch you die. 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 The Yin-Yang Lord wiped away the blood from his mouth and looked down at Li Qingshan from above. His 3 bulging eyes were bloodshot as he howled hysterically. A while later, a few more spots of livor mortis appeared on Li Qingshan's body. Even when he powered the Spirit Turtle's method of sea suppression at full strength, he was unable to suppress it. Li Qingshan suddenly took a step back and swung his right arm as hard as he could, tossing out the blade in his hand. It turned into a streak of blood-red light and shot into the sky. You want to injure me with an attack like that? The Yin-Yang Lord sneered. Suddenly, light filled his field of vision. The smooth, mirror-like surface of the Spirit Turtle's profound shell suddenly shifted, reflecting the silvery blue moonlight on his face. He became even more disdainful. You're still using tricks like that? How pitiful. A hand extended out of the resplendent moonlight, gripping the hilt of Tiger's Fang firmly. The Yin-Yang Lord's eyes suddenly widened as if he had seen a ghost. All he saw was Li Qingshan's scarlet hair drifting in the wind. He was brimming with energy. He did not seem injured at all. How is this possible? The Yin-Yang Lord retreated in a hurry, but he had already swung his blade. With the moonlight, he drew a silvery blue arc, hanging in the sky like a crescent moon. The trajectory of the Yin-Yang Lord's retreat just happened to coincide with the crescent moon, as if he had gone up to receive it himself. Moonlight flashed and demonic blood splattered. The Yin-Yang Lord's body split into 2. He widened his eyes, but all he saw was Li Qingshan standing on the ground, staring at him calmly. Meanwhile, the Li Qingshan before him had the same expression, swinging out another crescent moon. What a powerful clone. The King of Southern Yu and the others on the side could clearly see that the second Li Qingshan had flown out of the mirror-like surface that reflected the moonlight. If he were outside, just this clone would possess the strength of a demon king. Yi Duanhai sighed. No, he's even more powerful than regular demon kings. Aren't these 2 demon kings much more powerful than regular demon kings when they fuse? Yi Weiyang pointed at the battlefield again. I don't necessarily have to use a new ability to kill you. Li Qingshan smiled. Now this was his true trump card, the second innate ability of the Spirit Turtle transformation, the Water Mirror's image. The strength of the mirror clone was directly connected to his original body. After undergoing the tribulation and becoming a demon king, the strength of his clone had increased as well. Coupled with the strengthening of the innate ability itself, the power he could unleash was no weaker than before he underwent the tribulation, even under the suppression of the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous. Some people might find this strange. Before the tribulation, even when Li Qingshan and Gong Yuan worked together, they were not the opponent of the kings of Yin Yang fused with two demon kings, so how was it possible for him to emerge victorious alone? However, when the same power was controlled by a demon king and a demon commander, the effects would be completely different. The kings of Yin Yang could clearly sense this. The mirror clone's strength was clearly below his, but Li Qingshan seemed to be able to read his thoughts. He could predict his opponent's moves every single time, leaving openings all over his body. With the heart of the abyss in his mouth, Li Qingshan's eyes turned pitch black. He seemed to be staring at the kings of Yin Yang in the sky, but also like he was staring at the endless void. After breaking through to the 5th layer of the spirit turtle transformation, he could see the heavenly secrets and fate with even greater clarity. Although it took a tremendous amount of effort, he could still calculate the kings of Yin Yang's movements, which was enough for his mirror clone to gain the upper hand. However, he did not show any joy at all. The difference in strength was there. The 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous suppressed his mirror clone even more than his original body, or he would have summoned his mirror clone a long time ago. It would have been very difficult for him to deal a fatal strike to the kings of Yin Yang. And, his current state was even more difficult to maintain than the tiger demon's fury, as he had not developed an independent innate ability after all. If only the innate ability the spirit turtle had condensed this time was related to this. However, there were no ifs in life. All he could do was calmly accept his fate. He closed his eyes gently. Already exhausted, even his mind was close to the limit now. Chapter 970. Clang. Tiger Tooth flew back and stabbed into the ground not far from Li Qingshan. Although Li Qingshan had heavily injured the kings of Yin and Yang time and time again with his mirror clone, the vitality of demon kings was powerful, and they were in the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous too. No matter how heavily injured they were, they could recover rapidly. Meanwhile, the mirror image's power was weakening. The Yin Yang lords finally regained the upper hand and knocked the saber away. In just a moment, the mirror image collapsed under the echo of the demonic sound. The last trace of hope was extinguished. It was like the afterglow of the setting sun had completely sunk into the deep sea, leaving behind eternal darkness. Li Qingshan's expression was still calm. The livor mortis and turbid yellow spread all over his body and bones. With a loud bang, the Yin Yang lords landed far away and looked at him with the attitude of a victor. The terrible saber wounds on their bodies were recovering at a visible speed. They laughed sinisterly and said, "Li Qingshan, you lost to me again. How is it? You don't want to accept it, right?" "Wrong." Li Qingshan shook his head lightly. "A win is a win, a loss is a loss. There is nothing to be unconvinced about. Don't be stubborn. Let me give you a quick death." "Sure." Li Qingshan smiled. The Yin Yang lords took a step forward but stopped. "Do you think I'm so stupid? I'm going to stand here and watch how you die." Even though Li Qingshan looked so weak, as if he could be knocked down with one finger, the Yin Yang lords still didn't dare to approach him. Li Qingshan smiled. His gaze swept past the Yin Yang lords and looked in the direction of the 10,000 poison cult. He said in his heart, "Sorry, I have to leave you alone. Cultivate the most ferocious spells, fight the strongest enemies, sleep with the most beautiful women, all the way to the 9 heavens, and stand side by side with Brother Nyo." All of these ambitions would turn into nothingness. However, when he stepped out of that small village and swore never to return, he was already prepared for this. The only regret in his heart was that he couldn't see her again. The Silver Dragon King fell silent. Apart from the great banyan tree king, the other three did not have much of a relationship with Li Qingshan. As a matter of fact, they had even clashed with him in the past, but at that moment, they were all in no mood to talk. The banyan tree king clenched his fists tightly. There were a few times when he wanted to attack, but in the end, he let out a long sigh. His original body was over 10,000 kilometers away. With a mere clone, even if he took action, it would be futile. The three kings of Southern Yu would never take the risk with him. Demonic clouds covered the moon, and the stars dimmed. Suddenly, the pitch-black horizon was illuminated by a white light, as if the sun had broken through the dawn. In the next moment, white flames burned through half the sky. The king of Southern Yu raised an eyebrow and said in surprise, "Something's approaching. So fast." With a thought, the image on the porthole locked onto a figure within the flames 1,000 kilometers away. She held a shiny bone sword firmly in her hand as her seaweed-like hair drifted about in the flames. Her brows were firmly furrowed, filled with anxiety. Only when she saw his figure did she smile just now. Qingshan. Li Qingshan smiled as well. Even if he died right now, he would have no more regrets. The kings of Yin and Yang were alarmed, but they sneered. "Don't celebrate too early. Who do you think is bold enough to come in and save you?" With the power of the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous, anyone who fell into it would struggle to escape death. Even the king of Southern Yu, who rode the Silver Dragon King, was afraid to approach it, let alone others. Li Qingshan did not even glance at the kings of Yin and Yang. He gazed into the distance with a smile. He was not moved, nor would he try to persuade her to turn around and return. To them, living and dying together was only a matter of course. They were willing to spend another moment together, until death do us part. The flames in the sky receded, merging into Little N's body. She turned into a streak of white light and crossed the distance in the blink of an eye, flying over the Silver Dragon King. Under the gazes of the 12 demon gods, she threw herself into the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous without the slightest hesitation, throwing herself into his arms. Li Qingshan staggered before catching her. "You seem to have grown up again. I'm almost unable to carry you anymore." "Yeah." Little N nodded and stared straight at him. She touched his face with her bare hand and shone with a faint Buddhist glow. Wherever it passed by, the livor mortis and murky yellow were immediately purged, returning him to his normal skin tone. "You've also undergone the third heavenly tribulation." "Yeah." "Very good. Li Qingshan, congratulations on having another person accompany you to the grave," the kings of Yin and Yang said sinisterly. "This guy's blabbering is annoying." "Hurry up and kill him for me," Li Qingshan grumbled to Little N with a grin. "All right." Little N looked back indifferently. The kings of Yin and Yang's heart skipped a beat. They could not sense any danger or killing intent. There was only emptiness, as if she did not exist. They could not help but feel an indescribable sense of fear. They retreated almost instinctively, only to suddenly feel a pain in their chest. They lowered their heads in disbelief, only to see that the shiny white bone sword had already stabbed into their body. The skull engraved on the hilt was inches away, staring at them with its empty eye sockets. It seemed to be filled with benevolence, but the person who held the sword was expressionless, ignoring everything. There was no dazzling light or sharp sword chi. It was just an ordinary strike, but it seemed to pass through space and time, making it impossible to grasp its trajectory. Even now, the kings of Yin and Yang did not feel like they had actually been stabbed. What path of the sword is this? Yi Duanhai's eyes suddenly narrowed. As a great sword cultivator, he could clearly sense the terror within. The sword was pulled back immediately. It did not even pierce through the kings of Yin and Yang's body. Little and returned to Li Qingshan's side, standing there with her sword. After undergoing the third heavenly tribulation, not only had the Buddha-slaying sword turned from a sword embryo into a true sword, but her path of the sword had also finally broken free from the three absolutes calligraphy's shadow, forming a path of the sword that belonged to her. The path of the Buddha-slaying sword. This path of the sword had always existed in the path of white bone and great beauty. However, her cultivation in the past had been too low, so she was unable to comprehend it, let alone practice it. The kings of Yin and Yang retreated another 5 kilometers and stared at Little N in fear. This was definitely not an enemy they could deal with. Just what kind of monsters had Qiongqi's trap attracted? They were also confused as to why he did not continue his pursuit. Just when they were about to speak, meaningless gurgling sounds came out of their mouths. Suddenly, they split into two, turning into a male and female demon king. They recovered their normal posture and knelt on the ground, desperately clutching the same wound on their chests. The poison did not spread, nor did the wound expand. It just did not heal, as if it would never heal. What's going on? The two demon kings looked at one another. Their faces were filled with fear and confusion. Who knew how many times the blade had struck him, but it had never claimed his life, let alone a gentle strike like that. This feeling was so familiar, as if they had returned to a very, very long time ago. Back then, they were not powerful demon kings yet, but the weakest demon folk. They struggled to survive in the demon domain, facing death many times. Birth, residence, mutation, and destruction, success, residence, and destruction. Great beauty and white bone, the cycle of life and death, Little N recited gently as she stroked her sword. You don't understand, do you? In short, you're already dead. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. Then he asked Little N, am I right? Yes. Little N smiled. With two thuds, the two demon kings collapsed on the ground, dying like mortals. Chapter 971. Two swaying white lotuses rose up from the wounds of the two demon kings. At a closer glance, they were actually two pale white sparks. They suddenly turned into scorching samadhi flames of white bone and rushed into the sky, gathering in Little N's hand. He clenched it gently, and the traces of the two demon kings completely vanished. What sword is that? Yi Duanhai stared at the shiny bone sword and was completely shocked. Even if he used his full strength, he was not confident he could kill two demon kings in a single stroke, let alone in the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous. The sea-splitting sword was a famed sword in the world, but it definitely did not possess such power. Everything that he had seen today was too unimaginable. Sir, I finally believe that Qiongqi has come for them. Just what are their origins? The king of Southern Yu asked in surprise. He was unable to imagine whether he would end up like the two demon kings if that sword landed on him, dying a baffling death. I'm not too sure either. The banyan tree king shook his head gently, but he had a vague guess inside. As it seemed, the dream that Li Qingshan had mentioned in the past was not without reason. This is definitely not a power that should exist in this world, the king of Southern Yu said confidently. Even the 3 graves and 5 classics passed down through the imperial family of the Xia Empire definitely did not possess such power. Now, all the demon kings who had taken part in dealing with Li Qingshan were dead, yet what stood before him was the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous, as well as the mastermind Qiongqi. Interesting. This is far too interesting. Loud laughter suddenly rang out, echoing through the surroundings and making everyone's expressions change. It was Qiongqi's voice. Sure enough, he had been paying attention to this the entire time. There was no anger from the failure of his plan at all in the laughter. Instead, it was filled with surprise and joy. There was even a hint of naivety, like a child who had obtained a toy he liked. Among the 12 towering demon gods, the demon god Qiongqi that had never been injured the entire time began to laugh. His demon qi rapidly condensed, and his body gradually consolidated, gaining life. A pair of bright moons lit up in the surging demon qi. To no surprise, they were his eyes. He was shaped like a black tiger with wings on his back. An extremely distinct smile appeared on his face, and his huge mouth stretched into a terrifying arc. It was filled with sharp teeth. The laughter originated from his mouth. Boom! Qiongqi leisurely took a step forward, leaving the shackles of the demon's den. Countless interweaving cracks appeared in the void, like black chains, but they couldn't stop Qiongqi's footsteps. An invisible presence expanded out. Even the king of Southern Yu and the others who had retreated far away felt their breaths freeze. They were immediately tempted to flee on the Silver Dragon King. Qiongqi has really descended. The banyan tree king furrowed his brows. He could not guess how much Du Qiongqi would have to pay for this action, but it was definitely much more difficult than the descent of his will. Even if it was just a doppelganger condensed from demonic energy, controlling it as the mastermind behind the scenes was completely different from jumping onto the stage and directly interfering. Even his king had not expected Qiongqi to do this. Rumble. A string of thunderclaps resounded through the heavens and the earth, and in the blink of an eye, the sky had become a pool of lightning. The astral winds that were originally only circling high in the sky roared and tore the demonic clouds apart. The earth cracked and magma gushed out. There was also a formless magnetic force rising up from the ground to connect with the astral winds. The world seemed to be infuriated, releasing a terrifying warning. The swamp had already become a scene of the apocalypse. Qiongqi ignored the wrath of the world and continued to walk with composure, walking over from the scene of the apocalypse towards Li Qingshan and Little N as if it was mocking the uselessness of the world. Little N swung her sword and blocked in front of Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan grabbed her hand and stood beside her, staring at the approaching Qiongqi. He had never minded accepting her protection, but the enemy they faced this time was unprecedented and beyond his imagination. Looks like it's really over this time. The king of Southern Yu sighed. Even if the power that Qiongqi could unleash in this world was limited, the tremendous difference in cultivation had already determined that Li Qingshan and the others had no chance of victory at all, not to mention that Qiongqi's current strength had already approached the limits that this world could contain. It was equivalent to the peak of the third heavenly tribulation. Probably no one in the 9 provinces was his opponent. Yi Weiyang originally wanted to express her agreement, but then she looked at the Banyan Tree King. Yes. The Banyan Tree King closed his eyes. Descending regardless of the price had already demonstrated his determination to succeed. No matter what gods wanted to do, mortals would struggle to oppose them. Yi Weiyang looked away in some disappointment. Yeah, why did miracles keep happening? Boom! Qiongqi's huge claw stopped before them and was immediately swallowed by the magma. He did not care at all, lowering his head and looking at Li Qingshan. What a fascinating performance! A terrifying aura swallowed up Li Qingshan, but he was unfazed, as he had seen even more majestic figures in the past. He smiled resplendently. Then are there any prizes? Everything you want in the demon domain. You will become the ruler of Qingqi Mountain second only to me. Countless demon domains and trillions of demon folk will listen to your commands, allowing you to do whatever you want. By then, you'll find this world to be far too small. Qiongqi's offer left everyone tongue-tied. Originally, the king of Southern Yu had even been thinking that if Li Qingshan joined the demon domain, he might become the ruler of this world. Only now did he discover that he was still far too indecisive. Even his most exaggerated imagination seemed insignificant. Let's hope we're not one of the countless demon domains. The king of Southern Yu sighed. Oh my, a mighty figure. If I had known earlier, I would have curried favor with him. Elder Shu sure has a good eye. Yi Weiyang joked, but her eyes were filled with undisguisable envy. Just who could resist something like that? The Banyan Tree King smiled wryly. He really had no idea whether he should be happy or sad. Hee, it's a pity that you can't give me what I want. What is it? Don't waste time like a coward. Every second I stay here comes at a tremendous price. Cheong-chi's head drooped down a little more. The lightning and atmospheric winds in the surroundings had already begun bombarding his body, but they were blocked by a faint ring of Demon King. The laws of the world were like invisible shackles. The stronger one was and the higher one's cultivation was, the stronger the repulsion would be. No matter how powerful Cheong-chi was, it was impossible for him to contend against the entire world. However, his undisguised calmness was even more terrifying than a cold threat. Your life. Li Qingshan's smile vanished and he said resolutely. In that moment, time and space seemed to freeze. Although he also wanted to say, where there's life, there's hope, he could still clearly remember someone saying to him, remember, don't lower your head to anyone, because you've once ridden on my back. Chapter 972. Within the roaring wind and rumbling thunder, Li Qingshan's resolute voice rang out clearly. In the Silver Dragon King, the king of Southern Yu and the others were all stunned. How could there be such a foolish person in the world? He would rather be crushed than lower his head. Even though they were all kings that looked down on the world, none of them felt that lowering their heads to a true god was something shameful, let alone the fact that Cheong-chi had already demonstrated sufficient sincerity. It was definitely an honor to receive such attention from a god. Only the Banyan Tree King had a vague guess, but he only let out a long sigh inside. Cheong-chi was taken aback as well. Although he told Li Qingshan to stop trying to stall for time, he never expected him to be so decisive, actually leaving no room for negotiation. He lowered his head and bared his teeth. How foolish. And how strange. Li Qingshan, do you really think I won't kill you? Then come. Li Qingshan spread his arms, ready to die. You're very interesting as well, but I won't let you stab me with that sword. Cheong-chi's gaze suddenly shifted and landed on Little Anne. The sword in Little Anne's hand trembled involuntarily. Originally, he wanted to use the opportunity created by Li Qingshan to assassinate Cheong-chi. He was already prepared to draw his sword. With the power of the Buddha-slaying sword, he should be able to heavily injure Cheong-chi's clone. However, he clearly did not move at all, nor did he give off any killing intent, yet Cheong-chi saw through him with a single glance. This enemy was no longer as simple as a powerful enemy. He was basically flawless. Li Qingshan's heart sank. Cheong-chi really was not giving him any chances at all. Was he really going to die here today? You recognize this sword? Little Anne held up the Buddha-slaying sword and asked in thought. Not only do I recognize this sword, but I also recognize your flames. Not only is the path you wish to take intolerable to immortals and Buddhas, but even the demon domain is intolerable to you. Go, and I'll spare your life. Cheong-chi's voice boomed out, drowning out the rumbling thunder and howling of the wind as it bore down. Little Anne's body swayed. His clothes and long hair danced in the wind, but his expression did not change. He only gripped the Buddha-slaying sword tightly. Li Qingshan's eyes were solemn as he gathered the power of vibration and prepared to fight to the death. Even if there was no chance of victory, even if it meant certain death, he still had to fight. Li Qingshan, it's truly too boring to crush you like this. Do you want to live or die? Cheong-chi changed the topic, and the interest in its eyes grew even stronger. Of course. Li Qingshan shouted. Then let's make a bet. What bet? Today, I have bullied you. You must be feeling indignant. I will give you some time. He paused, 500 years. Come to Qingqi Mountain and we will fight again. If you lose, fine. If I can't topple your Qingqi Mountain in 500 years, I'll listen to your orders. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. He did not expect such a good thing to happen. 500 years was a huge amount of time. He would definitely be able to transcend the tribulation and ascend to outer space. Even if he was still not Cheong-chi's opponent, as long as he did not go to the demon area, Cheong-chi would not be able to do anything to him. This is what you said. Let's clap hands and swear. If I lose, it will be the same. Cheong-chi laughed strangely. Its body shrank rapidly and turned into a human. Its body twisted like a figure in an abstract painting. It was shrouded in a layer of demonic light, and its face could not be seen clearly. It reached out its distorted right hand to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan felt as if he had been tricked, but he could not go back on his word. He stepped forward and clapped hands with Cheong-chi to swear. Pa! The moment the two palms clapped, the surrounding strong wind and thunder calmed down. There seemed to be some invisible power that isolated the anger of heaven and earth. Li Qingshan vaguely saw a long, quiet river meandering in the void. It was vast and boundless, as if it had transcended time and space. It was difficult to calculate its length with ordinary measurements. Ha 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 ha. Cheong-chi's arrogant laughter was gradually drowned in the thunder. It was full of complacency, and its body was distorted by the invisible laws of heaven and earth. With a boom, it suddenly collapsed into a monstrous demonic aura. It surged and spread for thousands of miles, drowning the whole swamp and even the silver dragon king in the sky. In an instant, the thunder and wind stopped, as if the anger of heaven and earth had calmed down. The 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous collapsed as well, and Li Qingshan felt his entire body lighten up. He glanced at his palm, and the river appeared in his head again. He had a vague feeling that the oath was probably not as simple as it seemed. He felt like he had to pay a visit to Qingqi Mountain. Was this another trap? At the same time, somewhere in the demon domain, the 12 pillars stood tall. It was as if the scene created by the 12 citadel demon formation of the evil had become reality. The 12 supreme demon gods of the demon domain were sitting on the pillars, discussing something. There were vaguely words like Desireless Heavenly Palace, Shenwu, Devil Rinsing Heavenly Venerable, 7 Mansions of the North, ha 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 ha. Cheong-chi's laughter was so loud that it attracted the attention of the demon gods. They asked, Cheong-chi, what are you laughing at? Originally, Cheong-chi had been in a daze, and the other demon gods were not surprised. They knew that he hated such solemn and lengthy meetings the most, but they did not dare to underestimate him. This was because his mind was quick-witted, and he was always unpredictable. Often, he had a surprising way of winning. Then, they saw the smile on his lips, and there were a few snake-like thunderbolts intertwining on his body. They knew that his consciousness had arrived in some world and found something interesting, and he was being rejected by the laws of heaven and earth. The other demon gods disdained such a waste of effort, but they would not say anything. It was only when Cheong-chi laughed and there was a winding river above his head that they asked in shock, "You made a blood oath of the Styx River." Legend had it that the Styx River was the first river at the beginning of the world. Its flow defined time and formed destiny. An oath to the Styx River had a strong binding force. Once a blood oath was made, even the gods could not go back on their word, and even their destiny would be distorted. Cheong-chi smiled without saying a word, and he was filled with undisguised smugness. The demon gods did not ask any more questions and continued their discussion. 500 years was a very short time for him. The reason why it was not 50 years or 5 years, but 500 years was that the Styx River blood oath needed the approval of both parties from the bottom of their hearts. If the time was too short, Li Qingshan might agree, but the result would be mutual destruction, and it would be meaningless. 500 years was enough for the Styx River blood oath to be deeply rooted in destiny, and only then would he be obedient. There were many hidden and complicated conditions for the Styx River blood oath, and one of them was fairness. It was like a scale, and both parties had to put in enough chips. Although there could be some imbalance, once there was a complete imbalance, it would not be possible. Therefore, it needed 500 years to balance it. Cheong-chi even added, "If I lose, it will be the same." Other than that, there were some hidden harsh conditions. For example, in these 500 years, not only could he not initiate an attack, he could not intentionally suppress Li Qingshan. These were all his chips. That was why the demon gods were so shocked. The Styx River was not a tool that could be used casually, and there were many risks involved. If they were not careful, they could be affected. Usually, only existences at their level needed to make a Styx River blood oath to restrain each other. For weaker existences, there were many kinds of oaths that could guarantee that they would not lose anything. The Blood Oath book in Li Qingshan's hands was originally a method from the demon territory, and it could be considered a poor imitation of the Styx River Blood Oath. Cheong Qi had his own considerations in choosing to make a Styx River Blood Oath book. A large part of it was because of Little N's appearance. It could not be helped. The White Bone Bodhisattva, who had once tried to refine the Hungry Ghost realm, was too famous. Although she did not succeed in the end, her act of challenging the order of the 6 paths of reincarnation was enough to make people respect her. The Samadhi White Bone Fire was even more famous in the 6 paths of reincarnation. When Little N first appeared, Cheong Qi had some doubts. This was because an inheritance of this level could not be obtained with luck, and it was almost impossible for it to appear in a world of this level. However, when Shaoan slew the kings of Yin and Yang in a single stroke and refined them into the Samadhi flames of white bone, Cheong Qi was already certain. He could play around with the 9 provinces, but he would have to think twice before facing a white bone successor. Moreover, he had never been able to see through Li Qingshan's inheritance. This white bone descendant clearly had a relationship with Li Qingshan, which was even more thought-provoking. If Li Qingshan and Little N were both immortals and Buddhas, Cheong Qi would not mind immediately eliminating them. After all, they were enemies. However, they were obviously not. Li Qingshan had transformed into a demon, and there was some meaning of the coexistence of gods and demons. On the other hand, the White Bone Bodhisattva wanted to burn all living things, and everywhere she went, the world would become a land of death. Not even a single flower or grass could survive. Even the demon territory could not accommodate her, and she could not be more evil. If he killed the descendants of 2 demonic path giants just for a game, then it was not because he was too curious, but because there was something wrong with his brain. As the saying goes, curiosity killed the cat. To be able to live until now and become an evil god, he first had to distinguish the difference between playing and courting death. Therefore, although he put on a great posture and did not hesitate to send his incarnation to the 9 provinces, it was all a bluff. He did not want to kill Li Qingshan at all, but just to force him to make this bet. Choosing the fairer blood oath of the Styx River was also to have some leeway in the future. If no one came to interfere, it would be the best, as he would have a powerful helper. If the White Bone Bodhisattva or some other more terrifying existence jumped out, his action was not too much of a bully. At worst, he would just let them go. He was not worried that he would lose the bet. In a mere 500 years, any great cultivator in the 9 provinces would have a cultivation base of 1,000 or 800 years, and the monster kings would have thousands of years. No matter how strong Li Qingshan's inheritance was, it was almost impossible for him to cross so many realms in such a short time. 500 years later, he might not even be able to walk into Mount Qingqi, let alone defeat him and push down Mount Qingqi. Moreover, there was a huge trap hidden in the Styx River blood oath. If he could really walk into this world, he would realize that 500 years was not as long as he thought. Qingshan, are you okay? Little N asked with concern. Chapter 973. Little N gently pulled Li Qingshan into her arms. Suddenly, she looked back, and a streak of silver light appeared. The Silver Dragon King tore through the surging demon chi and cast down a silver pillar of light nearby. Fellow Little N, please board the ship for a chat. The King of Southern Yu invited. Little N considered it for a moment before picking up Li Qingshan and stepping into the silver pillar of light. She rose up slowly and boarded the Silver Dragon King. A puppet king led the way, taking her to the bridge. The Banyan Tree King, the King of Southern Yu, Yi Duanhai, and Yi Weiyang all stood up to receive them, bowing to express their respect. In the cultivation community, cultivation and strength were the foundation of everything. As Li Qingshan and Little N underwent the third heavenly tribulation together, displaying terrifying strength and limitless potential, their statuses in their eyes had become completely different. The Banyan Tree King asked, "Qingshan is fine, right? Thank you for your concern, Senior. He's just asleep." Little N bowed before saying to everyone, "Thank you for saving my life, but please don't leak what happened today." Whether it was her Samadhi flames of white bone or Cheongqi's descent, once news of it spread, it would lead to unpredictable trouble. If it was just some orthodox Buddhist cultivators who had come to purge demons, then it would be fine, but if they attracted the attention of certain existences from beyond the heavens, then the small trouble would become trouble. Of course. They all said. After witnessing the battle today, who would be willing to offend them? The king of Southern Yu gazed at the woman with supreme beauty and felt very emotional inside. He felt rather regretful. He should have forged a good relationship with her in the past. Little and went without saying, but Li Qingshan was someone who clearly distinguished between kindness and grievances. He was extremely worth befriending. If he could obtain the assistance of the two of them, it would be even better than 10 honored guests. The king of Chu's estate of the Green Province would be a piece of cake. But who would have thought that in a mere 10 or 20 years, they would ascend to the peak of the 9 states and stand side by side with the kings? They could even look down upon the masses. Back then, Li Qingshan's title of King of Savages made people feel that it did not live up to its name. Now, King of the Southern Territory was nothing to him. How could the entire 9 states compare to the vast demonic region that he had given up? He had made an agreement of 500 years with a deity while talking and laughing. Even if he really lost 500 years later, he would still be one of the few great figures in the demonic region. With one command, he could decide the fate of such a world. Compared to that, the feud between the Mist Province and the Green Province was a little like a snail's horn. It was not worth mentioning. As a result, he admired the Banyan Tree King's wisdom and insight even more. Originally, he still did not understand why the Banyan Tree King would treat a junior with special attention, even referring to him as a fellow. As it seemed now, it basically brought him endless benefits. Li Qingshan was still asleep. Little N had changed his method of cultivation slightly, no longer being completely emotionless to the people around him, but he was still calm and indifferent. He did not have much to say to the people around him. The reason why he ascended the Silver Dragon King was just to deal with the situation. He did not want to provoke unnecessary trouble because of his attitude. The King of Southern Yu and the others had yet to calm down either. They were not in the mood to talk too much, not because their mental fortitude and cultivation were lacking, but because they were shocked by the world beyond the well as frogs at the bottom of a well. They gained a new understanding of their own path of cultivation. "Where are you going?" "I'll give you a ride." "Thank you." "Fire Melt Mountain." Little N said quietly, but some thoughts surfaced in her mind. This is the greatest enemy of the King Chu Lai's estate. If I swing my sword, will I be able to kill him? In the past, she would never have thought of something like that. As a matter of fact, there was no difference between the King of Southern Yu and the Chu Lai King to her, but now, a fundamental change had occurred. Her past memories and experiences were no longer completely meaningless, but she had no idea whether this was good or bad. Had she followed the path that the White Bone Bodhisattva had once taken, or had she embarked on the wrong path with the path of White Bone and Great Beauty? All of this required time to prove. Of course, it was just a thought. She would never risk Li Qingshan's safety, nor did she believe there was a need for her to take part in this grievance. At this moment, the Azura field in Li Qingshan's arms trembled. As it turned out, Gong Yuan had grown impatient. Little N opened the Azura field and let out Gong Yuan. Gong Yuan had already tidied up her appearance, recovering her cold and arrogant demeanor. She glanced at Li Qingshan deeply with her deep blue eyes before looking away. Then she greeted the King of Southern Yu and the others one by one. Although she remained in the Azura field, she had Qing keep an eye on the situation outside the entire time. She had an idea about everything that was happening right now. As a matter of fact, she had even learnt about something that the king of Southern Yu and the others did not know about, such as how a certain will in the Azura realm had once invited Li Qingshan to join them. Yi Weiyang looked at Gong Yuan meaningfully and smiled. You sure have a good eye, sister. You've caught yourself a good husband. Gong Yuan shot a cold glance at Yi Weiyang and said to little An, if he wakes up, tell him to pay a visit to the South Sea. Afterwards, she left the Silver Dragon King. She did not even take back the heart of the abyss. The Silver Dragon King stopped above Fire Melt Mountain. Little An bade farewell with Li Qingshan in his arms. The king of Southern Yu said, if fellow Qingshan wakes up, please invite him to the Mist Capital for a drink. Afterwards, the Shadow Queen also sent an invitation. Yi Duanhai also spoke up, but the person he invited was not Li Qingshan, but little An, fellow, I've never heard of your path of the sword before. If there's the opportunity, I'd like to ask for your guidance. I'll pass on the message, but please forgive me, Pavilion Master Yi. I'm not a sword cultivator, so there's nothing I can teach you. Yi Duanhai said nothing more. The path of the sword was like a cultivation method. It had always been a secret that could not be passed on to others. He had only said that because he was delighted by the prospect. Since it did not work out, then so be it. It was not like he was displeased. Not to mention that he did not even have the slightest confidence of victory when he stood before her right now. So what if he was displeased? Little An nodded and bade farewell. He landed on the divine Wudong tree on the main peak of Fire Melt Mountain with Li Qingshan in his arms before entering the phoenix's nest. A tiny figure rushed over and hugged Li Qingshan firmly, sobbing. First father, you've finally returned. Take me away. I can't stay here any longer. Second father's not human. First father, answer me. What's wrong with you, first father? Don't die. What am I supposed to do if you die? Li Fengyuan. Feng Shiwu let out a furious roar, grabbing the little phoenix by the neck and lifting him up. Most of his gentlemanly demeanor had already been worn away. Only after this period of arduous education did he discover just how cute the phoenix's embryo was. Back then, when Li Qingshan was around, he would directly kick the little phoenix if he said anything wrong. The child's life force was startlingly great anyway. Regular, small injuries were nothing. Feng Shiwu even found this method of discipline to be too violent, so he often stopped Li Qingshan. Now, he was close to the point where he could no longer hold himself back. It was said that naughty children were difficult to discipline. A phoenix child, with great strength and intelligence was basically a father's nightmare. Little did he know that the little phoenix would rather suffer a few kicks from Li Qingshan than listen to Feng Shiwu's long-winded lecture. What he saw this time really touched his heart. Chapter 974. So noisy. Li Qingshan grumbled and threw both fists. Ouch! Before Li Fengyuan could even respond, he was sent flying, slamming into the wall. He trembled all over. Feng Shiwu's expression changed, and he swung his sleeve to block. An unstoppable force appeared, hiding a profound power of tremors. He staggered back over a dozen steps. Just now, he came to a halt. When he looked at Li Qingshan again, his eyes had not even opened, as if he was still asleep. He was surprised and doubtful. Was he really asleep, or was he pretending to be asleep? If he possessed such power when he attacked instinctively while asleep, that would be far too terrifying. In the past, he had treated Li Qingshan in a different light, not treating him like a regular demon commander. However, he felt like while Li Qingshan had a promising future, it would take him a century or two at the very least before he could stand on equal footing with him. He never thought he would actually undergo the tribulation and become a demon king in just a few months, and he would be shocked the moment he struck out. Stop disturbing him. Let him rest properly. Little and made Li Qingshan lie down and use his head as a pillow. With a flash of fire, Li Fengyuan wiped away the blood from the corner of his lips and lunged over again. With the purest phoenix bloodline, even half of Demon Kings paled in comparison to his vitality and recovery. He called out, "First Father, you're so powerful. Even Second Father isn't your opponent. No one can stop you anymore." His voice came to a halt. A slender hand wrapped around his neck, suspending him in the air before slowly tightening. Under the gaze of those clear eyes, the little phoenix seemed like he had seen a ghost. He struggled desperately. "You underwent the tribulation too. Release him." Feng Shiwu was alarmed. The little phoenix was only a demon commander, but he possessed extremely great strength. Under his guidance during this period of time, his strength was already on par with Demon Kings. In particular, when it came to speed, he had actually been suppressed in a single move, unable to fight back. And, Little End had struck without any prior signs, actually giving him a feeling of unpredictability. Even he found her expression chilling right now. "Shoo." Little End raised her index finger to her lips. Li Fengyuan nodded furiously, and only then did she release him. Li Fengyuan immediately fled far away, hiding behind Feng Shiwu. In that instant, Feng Shiwu felt like this method of education was not entirely bad. However, he immediately tossed this thought aside and asked, "What exactly is going on?" "Let's wait until he wakes up." "All right then. I'll play the zither for him." With a wave of Feng Shiwu's hand, the zither and zither were all prepared. The incense burner breathed out slowly as he sat on his knees and stroked the zither. The zither played softly. Hearing the sound of the zither, Li Qingshan's expression became increasingly calm. The entire divine wudong tree seemed to have turned into a zither. Its branches and leaves swayed, and the zither music echoed. Little End nodded towards Feng Shiwu in gratitude. The phoenix's nest really was the best place to rest. It allowed Qingshan to sleep well and recover as soon as possible. Li Qingshan woke up. After sleeping for over half a month, he had a long dream. The dream was a mess of changes. There were the wasted experiences of his past life, as well as the struggles of his current life. Enemies, friends, and lovers leapt out one by one before vanishing again. In the end, there were demon kings circling around him, twisting and merging into a strangely laughing head. It repeated, 500 years, 500 years, 500 years. In the background was the winding river in space. The head grew larger and larger, as if it wanted to swallow him in a single gulp. He furrowed his brows and gritted his teeth as if he was trapped in a nightmare. He felt even more distressed and anxious than when he was being hunted down by the Dragon King of the Sea. There was a rumble. The scene shattered. A burly figure said without even looking back, "No, 10,000 years. Yes, 10,000 years." Li Qingshan smiled and murmured to himself. The figure gradually traveled off into the distance, sinking into the darkness. He woke up from his dream and heard someone whisper, "Second Father, what's First Father talking about? 10,000 years. That's my blood, sweat, and tears for you. You have to be obedient in the future, do you understand?" Feng Shiwu never forgot to educate him. "Okay." Li Fengyuan nodded obediently. His eyes rolled around as he gazed at Li Qingshan eagerly. Li Qingshan yawned and yawned. He sat up and leaned against his hand. His head still hurt slightly, and he was still exhausted. He had yet to recover completely. He had fought for several months, sweeping through the demon caverns, then falling into the 12 citadel demon formation of the ominous, entering the demon cavern again, undergoing the third heavenly tribulation, fending off the 7 demon kings, being hunted down by the demon emperor, and facing a demon god in the end. There were so many things. Regular great cultivators would feel extremely exhausted if they went through even one of them, yet he had gone through them all in a single breath. Although he would never lack battle intent in battle, it was unavoidable for him to feel extremely exhausted after the battle. First father, you're awake. Li Fengyuan glanced at Little and carefully and greeted him gently and obediently. Damned brat, it's been a few months since we last met, so why aren't you enthusiastic? Don't learn from your second father. Li Qingshan reached out and pulled Li Fengyuan into his arms. I was just a little enthusiastic, and you sent me flying. Stop. I'm about to break. Li Fengyuan felt all the bones in his body creak between Li Qingshan's arms. Did I? Why don't I remember? Li Qingshan scratched his head and laughed aloud. Though, it's perfectly reasonable for a father to hit his son. It also contains my heavy fatherly love. Li Fengyuan's face twisted as if he was about to vomit. What? You still don't accept this? Li Qingshan shot a glance at him and exerted a little more force. Li Fengyuan immediately said, I do. First father is wise and mighty. You have your reasons for hitting me. How can I not accept this? Feng Shiwu let out a long sigh. There was actually such a spineless phoenix in the world, and he was clearly beaten up, yet he seemed to enjoy it. He really had no idea what to say. I didn't think you'd undergo the third heavenly tribulation so quickly. I've still underestimated you. Second brother. Li Qingshan sniggered. Li Fengyuan immediately understood and giggled. Shut up. After a series of pleasantries, Li Qingshan told him everything that had happened. He did not hide too much from Feng Shiwu and the little phoenix. He only hid the parts that were directly related to his secrets, such as Little N's path of white bone and great beauty. The little phoenix leaned against his shoulder and beamed with joy as he listened. He was tempted to take part in it and fight with Li Qingshan. Qiongqi. Feng Shiwu was greatly surprised. Only at his realm of cultivation could he deeply understand just what a true god meant. Li Qingshan's purging of the demons was actually a trap laid down by evil god Qiongqi. In the end, he even directly descended with an incarnation and invited Li Qingshan to the demon domain. If it were not for the fact that he knew Li Qingshan was not the type of person who spoke nonsense, Feng Shiwu basically wondered whether he was still dreaming, or whether he was making up a fairy tale to fool a child. This was just far too unimaginable. Yeah, it's that bastard. He really has nothing better to do. How can there be such a bored god? Fortunately, he's bored enough. Originally, I thought I was dead for sure, but I never thought he'd only set a time limit of 500 years. Li Qingshan said rather happily. The situation back then was indeed hopeless. Even if he was in perfect condition, there was no chance of victory even if he worked with Little Anne. Chapter 975. I know. 500 years is far too short, but it's not like there's no chance. Li Qingshan was not surprised at all. If it were a regular cultivator, they could have declared the bet a loss before it had even begun. They had no chance at all, but he was confident that he was not regular. The question is, how exactly do you calculate these 500 years? Feng Shiwu shook his head with his hands behind his back. What do you mean calculate? Li Qingshan was confused. Were there any other ways to calculate time? No matter how he calculated it, it was still that long. You really don't know. Your 500 years is different from Qiongqi's 500 years. What's the difference? Li Qingshan felt rather uneasy. Haven't you heard of the saying, a day in heaven is a year on earth? Li Qingshan immediately realized what he meant. His expression changed. You mean, the 3,000 worlds come in all shapes and sizes, high and low. The larger and higher they are, the faster time flows. As a god, Qiongqi definitely resides in an extremely high and distant world. To us, it's equivalent to heaven. Qiongqi's 500 years might be 5,000 years or even more to the 9 provinces. That's not too bad. However, if you calculate it according to your 500 years, which is the 9 provinces' 500 years, you might only have 50 years left after ascending, or even less. Fuck. Li Qingshan cursed. So something like that really happened? Is the difference really that great? I've never been to a higher and distant world either. I only have a rough idea. I'm not sure about the exact details. Perhaps I've still underestimated it. After all, summer insects cannot speak of ice, and a young year cannot tell the old year. There's another saying, 7 days in a cave is 1,000 years in the world. It sounds very unbelievable, but places like that do exist. Stop. Don't go on. Li Qingshan raised his hand. What a guy. If he really calculated it according to 7 days in a cave is 1,000 years in the world, then he only had 3.5 days left of his 500 years. In other words, while Cheongqi blanked out, he would have to fight him in front of Cheongqi. It was no wonder that Cheongqi had the patience to wait 500 years for him. The idea of using 500 years to challenge a god was already bordering on madness. 50 years was simply a fantasy, so what if it was 3 days? Daydreaming? You don't have to worry too much. If you didn't mention this when you swore the oath, you basically left some leeway, said Feng Shiwu. I hope so. Li Qingshan frowned and thought of the winding river in the void. Although he did not know that it was the legendary Styx River, he vaguely understood that it had something to do with Cheongqi's bet. He would not overestimate the morality of an evil god. Instead, he felt that it was only natural. The kind of plot where Cheongqi would leave his opponent alone and give them enough time to grow before finally having a fair duel would only appear in anime. No matter how he looked at it, Cheongqi didn't seem to be stupid at all. However, he wasn't particularly angry. After all, he had preserved his useful body. Whether it was 500 years or 50 years, he finally had a buffer period. He could slowly think of a solution. If he wasn't strong enough, he could think of a way to cancel the vow. What truly worried him was the difference in the flow of time. Brother Ox gave him 10,000 years to ascend to the 9 heavens. He originally felt that it was an extremely long time and even unreachable. But looking at it now, the 9 heavens definitely existed even higher than the demon domain. Then just how long was 10,000 years equivalent to Brother Ox? With each step he took, the 10,000 years would rapidly shrink, and there was nothing he could do about it. He had to race against time and increase his cultivation as quickly as possible. Only then could he make it to the 9 heavens. This was a vow that he would rather die than cancel. Feng Shiwu still thought that Li Qingshan was worried about Cheongqi, but little and could tell what he was really thinking. He tugged at his sleeve. We'll definitely make it. Of course. Li Qingshan smiled resplendently. Worrying was not his personality. Even if he frowned every single day, he could not make the 9 heavens even a tiny bit closer. Why didn't he just open his mind and stride forward? It's time to return to the Green Province. Li Qingshan gazed into the distant north. There were some grievances waiting for him to settle. There were some old friends that he had been separated from for a very long time already. Suddenly, he thought of a beautiful figure. After so many years, was she still waiting for him? Perhaps she had already given up on him. This separation had already lasted for far, far too long. Little and agreed with him. She also seemed to be in thought. After changing her path of cultivation, memories of the past would frequently surge into her head. Her past parents were no longer unimportant symbols either. However, she still had not thought about how she should face them, or whether she should continue maintaining the current situation. This was a problem that the emotionless and sexless her had never experienced. Li Qingshan rubbed her head. He had sensed her changes a long time ago, so he felt happy for her. First father, can you take me with you to the Green Province? The little phoenix flew over. His eyes were filled with eagerness. You're not allowed to go anywhere. Feng Shiwu grabbed him by the neck. First father, I promise I won't cause you any trouble. I'll properly train and increase my cultivation. I'll help you fight the Dragon King and Cheong Chi in the future. The little phoenix patted his chest and guaranteed. Damned brat, there's nothing fun in the Green Province. Li Qingshan shook his head with a smile. He was rather fond of this adopted son he had personally hatched. He was not just joking when he said he would help him fight the Dragon King. The divine bird phoenix had the confidence to do that. All it lacked was time. Sigh, time again. Just how was he supposed to deal with this? Anywhere is better than being imprisoned here. I beg you, first father, please take pity on me. The little phoenix gazed at Li Qingshan tearfully, completely ignoring the furious Feng Shiwu. Li Feng Yuan. Feng Shiwu bellowed furiously and slammed the little phoenix against the ground viciously. He struggled, refusing to yield. He constantly called out, "Save me, first father. Just take him with you." Little An said. Li Qingshan was slightly surprised. Even he, who loved the little phoenix, did not want to take a burden that would definitely cause trouble with him. Little An's attitude towards the little phoenix had always been cold, so why had it suddenly changed today? Even the little phoenix forgot to struggle. He stared at her blankly. A bird should soar in the sky, not to mention a divine bird phoenix. Fellow Taoist Feng, restraining him here might be helpful for his cultivation, but it will only wear down his spirit. What he lacks now is not power. Little An spoke with fervor and assurance for once, which made Feng Shiwu sink into his thoughts. During this period of time, the little phoenix did indeed seem more and more restless and uneasy. I know you're afraid of attracting attention, but with Qingshan and my protection, who can harm him? Let alone the fact that he himself possesses the strength of a demon king. If he doesn't even have the courage to venture out under these circumstances, can he still be regarded as a phoenix? He's not even as good as a pheasant. I'll never be a pheasant. The little phoenix called out in an extremely cooperative manner. Chapter 976. All right then. After some consideration, Feng Shiwu finally nodded and agreed. He really could not trap the little phoenix in this tiny phoenix nest forever, and staying by Li Qingshan's side was even safer than staying on Fire Melt Mountain. The little phoenix let out a cheer and turned back to his original form, flying around Feng Shiwu a few times before throwing himself into his arms. Thank you, second father. There will be a day when you leave this world and follow your true parents. You will find that wudong that belongs to you. Feng Shiwu hugged him tightly. His smile carried some melancholy. The phoenix flew away, leaving behind the wudong in the air for 10,000 years. The little phoenix was taken aback. Suddenly, he felt pained. How could he not sense the 10,000 years of companionship? Originally, he wanted to fly even further away, but only when he truly parted did he discover he still had not grown accustomed to it. This was a feeling that the phoenix's legacy had never taught him. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He almost wanted to change his words. It's not easy to find a wudong as good as you. If you don't want to be separated like this, then cultivate properly. Let's go to a higher world together and take a look. Li Qingshan patted Feng Shiwu's shoulder. That's reasonable. We should take another step forward. Feng Shiwu smiled as well. He was a plant demon, but as a natural divine tree, his cultivation speed should not have been so slow. He had spent far too much effort hatching the phoenix's embryo, which affected his cultivation speed. Don't worry, second father. I definitely won't find another wudong. The little phoenix wiped away his tears and clenched his fists. Feng Shiwu smiled and said to Li Qingshan, I'll leave Feng Yuan to you. You're the first father. If anything happens to him, cut the bullshit. He needs to grasp his own fate. If he's bold enough to do it, then he's bold enough to take responsibility for it. If it's not because his surname is Li, I'll take care of him for the rest of his life. Even if he dies outside, he can forget about it. Li Qingshan said firmly. He wanted something spectacular, yet he was afraid of danger. How could there be something as good as that in the world? Feng Shiwu was speechless. His expression changed several times before finally shaking his head and sighing. This is the first time I feel that you're indeed more suitable to be a father than me. Of course. The little phoenix clenched his fists. His gaze was determined. No matter how different the phoenix's legacy was from Li Qingshan's will, there was one similarity at the very least, and that was to not be a coward. All right, let's go. Li Qingshan leapt out of the crater and Little and followed closely behind. The little phoenix hugged Li Qingshan again. Second father, I'll come back to visit you when I have time. A phoenix cry rang out in all directions. The cry of a young phoenix was clearer than the cry of an old phoenix. The phoenix spread its wings, rushing into the heavens, unexpectedly also tens of thousands of zhang in brilliance. A few shamans and cultivators gathered at the foot of Fire Melt Mountain. They had all come to Fire Melt Mountain in search of treasure before being caught by the little phoenix. Right now, they all gazed at the sky in amazement. The radiance was brilliant, dazzling and dazzling. She turned her neck, and her feathers danced in the wind. She had an innate elegance, and even Li Qingshan and Little and were amazed. Little Phoenix flew a few rounds in the sky and stopped on Li Qingshan's shoulder, lightly pecking his cheek. Let's go. Let's go. Little and passed on what Gong Yuan and the others had told her to Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan gazed at the South Sea in the distance and took out the heart of the abyss. He said, "Wait for me on Savage Mountain first. I'll pay a visit to the South Sea." Before he had even finished talking, he had already taken off, vanishing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The little phoenix secretly glanced at Little Anne. He felt some instinctive fear towards her. He could not help but feel rather uneasy about being alone with her right now. "I'll let you fly for a while. Let's see who reaches Savage Mountain first. The loser has to pluck a feather for me." Little Anne smiled. The smile was different from before. Instead, it was filled with true emotions. The little phoenix immediately found her to be so amiable, which roused his competitive spirit again. He flapped his wings and said, "All right." As a result, he embarked on the first journey of his life in a bet. He flapped his wings as hard as he could and flew towards the distant horizon. The world seemed endless. Feng Shiwu stood at the top of a tree and gazed into the distance. He wanted to say something, but he faltered a few times. The little phoenix was his greatest secret. Originally, he wanted to keep this secret under wraps and avoid being coveted by others. However, with such a grand flight, the little phoenix's existence would definitely be known by the world. However, on further thought, how could his true brilliance always remain hidden? "Look, that's my child." On that day, many people saw a legendary phoenix fly across the sky. When Savage Mountain appeared on the horizon, the little phoenix glanced backwards. He still did not see Little Anne's figure, so he could not help but let out a complacent cry. He muttered to himself, "You're trying to make me suffer, aren't you? But hold on, I have to pluck a feather if I lose. Why didn't I say what she has to do if she loses? You're thinking too much." A voice drifted over, as if it had rang out right by his ear. "What?" Before the little phoenix could even respond, he felt a slight pain. A white figure brushed past him. Little Anne held a feather between her fingers and vanished into the rolling mist that enveloped Savage Mountain. The little phoenix was extremely vexed, but he could not help but admire her strength. His endless fighting spirit was roused, and he became excited again. A feather was nothing to him. This was the first time he had flown like this in his life. He felt much faster than when he was on Fire Melt Mountain. He understood that this was because he had unleashed a portion of the power in his body. Looking back, Fire Melt Mountain had already vanished. He secretly made up his mind and dove towards Savage Mountain. The mist dispersed, and the view before him suddenly opened up. All he saw was Little Ann standing on a towering tree. He landed on it as well. The glorious light threw Savage Mountain into chaos. The Banyan Tree King was filled with amazement too. That's a phoenix. As if his past memories had been revived, the figure he originally thought he would never see again actually appeared before him again. He asked Little Ann, "Where did you find him?" "There's no need to say anything. I understand." Feng Shiwu had left the main peak of Fire Melt Mountain 10,000 years ago, so he had already guessed this. Combined with Li Qingshan's stay in the phoenix's nest, the matter became as clear as day. "He's Qingshan's foster son," Little Ann said. "If he didn't have a foster father like that, why would Feng Shiwu let him out?" The Banyan Tree King expressed his understanding. A droplet of phoenix blood refined into a pill could extend one's lifespan. It was enough to tempt any cultivator. First father is the strongest. You're the Banyan Tree King. I know you. Sure enough, you're much bigger than second father. That's right. I might not be a Wutong, but please rest for now, said the Banyan Tree King. He also felt rather honored. You're welcome, you're welcome. The little phoenix looked around curiously. What an auspicious omen, but what a pity. The Banyan Tree King sighed. Legend had it that the appearance of the phoenix was a symbol of peace, but the world was in chaos right now. Although Li Qingshan had basically flattened all the demon caverns in the south, the demon domain did not seem to have any intentions of giving up. The situation was becoming more and more chaotic. Chapter 977. Li Qingshan rushed into the atmospheric wind layer and wove the atmospheric winds into his wings of wind, flying at an unprecedented speed. His exhaustion from the battle had yet to vanish, but he felt extremely light. The sharp atmospheric winds brushed past his ears, and the scenery on the ground was thrown far behind him. A while later, he arrived above the boundless South Sea. There was a shadow on the surface of the sea. A storm was currently sweeping through. It was not as great as the storm that battered Fire Melt Mountain, but it was still quite large, displaying the might of the world without any fear. With a thought, Li Qingshan suddenly plummeted, diving into the storm. Fierce winds, heavy rain, lightning, and rumbling thunder rushed over, but it was only a fleeting sight. In just a few seconds, he had passed through the center of the storm. Looking back, a crack suddenly appeared in the thick storm clouds, creating a valley of sunlight in the darkness. The storm paused for a moment before collapsing and dispersing. Li Qingshan smiled resplendently and flew into the depths of the South Sea without even looking back. He arrived above the Crystal Palace and discovered with a sweep of his soul sense that Gong Yuan was currently cultivating in the sea abyss. He concealed his presence and dove down silently, arriving at the bottom of the sea abyss and silently approaching her from behind. Her deep blue hair drifted with the waves, and her slender figure seemed like the soul of the ocean, giving off a strange charm. When they were still over 30 meters apart, Gong Yuan suddenly sensed something and turned around. Li Qingshan, what are you trying to do by sneaking around like that? I'm just giving you a surprise. Li Qingshan laid out his hands, but he was surprised inside. She had actually discovered him beforehand. They really did dual cultivate together before. I don't think there's anything to be happy about. Return the heart of the abyss to me. Don't come over. Gong Yuan's expression was icy cold. With a wave of her hand, she carved out an ice wall in front of Li Qingshan. The icicles were like thorns, filled with a sense of threat. Is anyone home? Li Qingshan knocked on the ice wall. Yuan, open up. Don't waste my time. Gong Yuan frowned. She did not fall for his tricks. All right then. Li Qingshan's movements paused. According to his usual temperament, he wouldn't care what you said. Let alone this ice wall, even a glacier wouldn't be able to stop him. However, his current mood was very different. Gong Yuan's position in his heart was also not ordinary, so he stood still and threw the heart of the abyss over the ice wall. Gong Yuan checked it carefully, as if she was afraid that Li Qingshan would cheat her with a fake one. Li Qingshan shook his head. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea, let alone a woman who cultivated at the bottom of the sea. Everything that had happened in the devil's den was still vivid in his mind, and that passionate kiss was engraved in his heart. How could he change his attitude so quickly? I'm here to say goodbye. I'm going back to Qingzhou. I know. Gong Yuan put away the heart of the abyss. She had no intention of asking him to stay. I don't know when we'll meet again after today. If you need my help, feel free to come find me. Li Qingshan smiled helplessly. He did not approach her. Only when he vanished into the deep, gloomy seawater did the iciness on Gong Yuan's face recede just now, replaced by gloominess. From the perspective of the merfolk queen, she should have done everything she could to befriend Li Qingshan instead of coldly distancing herself from him. The strength and potential that Li Qingshan had displayed during the battle in the 12 Citadel demon formation of the ominous had amazed even the king of Southern Yu. Even demon god Qiongqi wished to receive his assistance. Just how powerful of an ally was he? However, perhaps because he had nullified her inner demons, she was unable to maintain her composure anymore, or perhaps because of the infatuated nature of merfolk, but she finally let her emotions get the better of her. Of course, she knew he would not stay in the South Sea, but she still held on to a sliver of hope. Perhaps he would change his mind. In the end, she was blocked by an ice wall. Her pride prevented her from asking him to stay. All she could do was gaze into the distance in melancholy. The profound light illuminates all reflected her face, and Li Qingshan sighed inside. He still had a very, very long path ahead of him. It was impossible for him to stay in a certain place for too long. Since they would have to bid farewell sooner or later, perhaps this was not a bad thing. When Li Qingshan's presence completely vanished, Gong Yuan closed her eyes gently and thought back to everything that had happened since they met. She experienced a different feeling inside, as well as a hint of bitterness. What a resolute man he was. Afterwards, she used the all-water to Ruin's End and did her best to use the cold power of Ruin's End to calm her various emotions. Suddenly, a pair of powerful arms wrapped around her tightly from behind. A familiar voice rang out by her ear, surprise. Li Qingshan. Gong Yuan was furious. She radiated with a bone-chilling coldness, freezing the seawater into ice. With a wave of her slender, beautiful fishtail, the ice shattered and shot everywhere. Li Qingshan laughed aloud. The entire sea abyss shook because of it. Being filled with so many worries really was not in his character. He deeply despised such a pretentious situation where words could not be spoken. As a result, he was determined to return. While she was uneasy, his sneak attack really succeeded. With a flap of his wings, he tore through the surface of the sea and reached the horizon. What do you want to do? Stay in the South Sea. How could Gong Yuan resist his strength? Not to mention that her cultivation method was even suppressed by him. No matter how she struggled, she could not break free from his embrace. All she could do was give up. The scenery here is quite nice. It's much better than the bottom of the ocean. Li Qingshan pointed at the sky. The sun was shining brightly. If you're turning me down, then just say it. Gong Yuan sneered. Sorry. Li Qingshan's gaze was sincere. Whatever. If you really stay, I'll look down on you instead. How are you going to deal with Qiongqi? Gong Yuan asked. Qiongqi is easy to deal with, although he might have fallen for a trick. Li Qingshan explained Feng Shiwu's analysis with a smile. That's easy to deal with. Gong Yuan widened her eyes. If it's a bet I was forced to make, I just have to find a way to renege on it. However, there are some agreements that can't be reneged on. Li Qingshan gazed at the sky. His eyes were filled with unquenchable desire. What agreement? This was the first time Gong Yuan had seen him like this. 10,000 years. Someone's waiting for me there. He said he'll wait for me for 1,000 days. Li Qingshan pointed straight at the sky. A day in heaven is a year on earth. No, a decade. Gong Yuan said in surprise. That's right. He once said that 10,000 years for me is just 1,000 days to him. I used to think that was just a metaphor, expressing that 10,000 years was nothing to him, but only now have I realized that he doesn't seem like someone who likes to use metaphors. Li Qingshan sniggered. Gong Yuan was unable to imagine just how far away that was. Time actually flowed 3,600 times faster than the 9 provinces. Your cultivation method is the legacy, that's right. That can be considered my greatest secret. Li Qingshan said. Originally, he had treated his transmigration as his greatest secret, but as it seemed now, possessing innate wisdom was nothing special at all. It's meaningless to me. Gong Yuan seemed disdainful, but she was unable to hold back her joy. It's pointless. I really don't know how to make a beauty smile. Just give me a casual smile when I'm so helpless. Li Qingshan smiled. Having left and returned, he did not ask for anything else. Gong Yuan smiled faintly. I hope that one day, your wish will come true and you can make it to that date. I'm very grateful. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. He lowered his head and said, let's have a goodbye kiss. Gong Yuan sneered and turned her head away. Hey, I really have to leave this time. I don't know when we'll meet again. Then hurry up and leave. Gong Yuan waved her hand impatiently. All right then. Li Qingshan helplessly let go of her and slowly retreated. Just as she turned her head around, he used all his strength to flap his wings, increasing his speed to the limit. He flew up and kissed her lightly on the lips. Li Qingshan. Gong Yuan scolded. Li Qingshan laughed heartily. He spun and flew up into the sky, disappearing in the blink of an eye. His voice echoed between the clouds and mountains. The mountains will not change, and the rivers will flow forever. Yuan, we'll meet again. What a terrible man. Gong Yuan stood between the clouds and mountains for a while, as if he was still hiding somewhere and would come out at any time to force a hug on her. The white clouds drifted leisurely. This time, he had really gone far away. She touched her lips and smiled. The sea was vast and boundless, and the sky was misty and boundless. She thought in her heart, do you think those words can scare me? I'm also a cultivator. If I go through the tribulation and ascend, your 10,000 years will at most be a few thousand years to me. Maybe it will only be a few hundred years. Bah, why do I calculate this? I can't be that kind of woman who waits passionately. Li Qingshan continued to head north, leaving the South Sea far behind. He looked straight ahead. After so many trials and tribulations, it was finally time to return. He shouted at the top of his voice. Chapter 978. First Senior Brother, you've returned. As soon as Li Qingshan returned to Savage Mountain, Duoj came up to receive him. I've made you wait. You can go first. I'll be returning to the Green Province right now. Really? Why don't we travel together? I just happen to have many things I don't understand about the demon suppression statuary, so I'd like to ask first Senior Brother. Duoj was still afraid that Li Qingshan would change his mind and try to coax him back to the Green Province. What, you still don't trust me? Li Qingshan patted his shoulder with a smile. I do. Duoj only felt like his first Senior Brother had changed drastically again in just a few short months. The resplendent sunlight gilded him, casting a black shadow. In a daze, he seemed taller than the surrounding mountains, possessing an incomparably stalwart bearing. However, only when he returned to his senses did he discover that it was just an illusion. His expression and bearing even seemed calmer than before. Li Qingshan said, "Then piss off. I still have some matters to attend to in the Mist Province, so it might take a few days. However, the journey is long, so I might even be a step faster than you. I'll set off right now to report back to Master." Duoj immediately set off, directly making his way out of Savage Mountain. First Father. The little phoenix flew down from the treetop and landed on Li Qingshan's shoulder. His resplendent tail feathers almost touched the ground. "How's this place compared to Fire Melt Mountain?" "It's much more fun." "Then you might as well just stay here." "No, I want to go to the Green Province." As he spoke, Li Qingshan arrived before the Banyan Tree King and smiled. "Fellow, you still owe me something. I knew you wouldn't forget about it. Come to Towering City." The Banyan Tree King said, "I've already been waiting for quite some time." Duoj left Savage Mountain, afraid to fly in the sky. After switching to the demon suppression statuary, he could no longer be regarded as a demon folk, but his power still originated from the demon heart in his body. Right now, demon folk were being slaughtered throughout the Mist Province, so he could not afford to be careless. Turning his head, he saw 3 beams of light piercing through the sea of fog and reaching the horizon. They flew over his head and headed north. His heart was completely at ease. Li Qingshan headed all the way north, and it didn't take long for him to leave South Sea County. He couldn't help but feel a little emotional as he recalled everything that had happened in the past 20 years, but he quickly threw these thoughts to the back of his mind. There was still a long way to go, and now wasn't the time to reminisce. The endless sea of trees spread, and the weather was sometimes sunny and sometimes rainy. Suddenly, a wriggling shadow appeared on the horizon, connecting with the thick fog and clouds in the sky. Was it a mountain? No, it was a tree. Towering banyan trees stood tall, and each one was like a tall mountain. Thick fog pervaded the foot of the mountain, and the dark green canopy intersected with each other, like an endless sea of clouds. Aerial roots intersected and grew, like a horned dragon soaring over the mountains and rivers. Li Qingshan couldn't help but stop and look up, but he couldn't see the end of it. Even though he already knew that the Banyan Tree King's body was incomparably huge and stretched for tens of thousands of miles, he still couldn't help but exclaim at this moment. So big. Little Phoenix exclaimed, "It's much bigger than Second Elder Father." "It seems too big," Little An said. Li Qingshan was slightly startled, and also nodded. "A little. What do you mean, isn't it good to be big?" Little Phoenix asked curiously. "It's not bad, but it's not all good either." "Aren't you very small?" Li Qingshan said with a smile. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have noticed anything strange, and would only be amazed. In the normal state of Little Phoenix, even including its tail feathers, its body was less than 10 feet, and the divine Wudong tree couldn't compare to any of the banyan trees here. The Great Whale King's body was only 10,000 feet, and compared to it, the Banyan Tree King was a little too big. Even though banyan trees had the natural ability to form a forest by itself, it wasn't easy for them to expand to such a large scale, and it was unknown how much effort they had put in. When Li Qingshan saw this sea of trees, he no longer had any doubts about the strength of the Banyan Tree King, and even felt that he might be the strongest existence in the 9 provinces. These great banyan trees weren't simply extending, but faintly formed a kind of formation, forming a domain of its own. Even if the Dragon King of the Sea entered this sea of trees, he would only end up with a grievance. However, what cultivators pursued was a qualitative change, to condense power to break through to the next realm, and not a quantitative change. The horizontal development of the Banyan Tree King really made people scratch their heads in confusion. If he used all this effort on his main body, perhaps he would have already ascended. "Who are you?" "This is the territory of Towering Sky City." The sea of trees in the distance suddenly rippled, and a green-skinned giant with wood grain all over its body stood up, and looked at Li Qingshan with vigilance. "This place doesn't welcome humans." Giant lumberman tribe. Li Qingshan said curiously. Moreover, the aura emitted by this giant lumberman had clearly gone through 3 heavenly tribulations, and was also a giant lumberman king. Just now, he was shocked by this sea of trees, and the aura of the giant lumberman had perfectly integrated into the sea of trees, so he didn't notice it for a moment. At this time, the sea of trees trembled, and the clouds dispersed. The trees beside the giant lumberman king stood up one after another, and turned into green-skinned giants. Most of their gazes fell on the little phoenix, and their eyes were full of surprise. After all, the legendary phoenix was rare, but they were all silent, and it was unknown whether they were communicating with their divine sense. We are the guests of the Banyan Tree King, and we are on our way to Towering Sky City. Li Qingshan recalled that many years ago, he once told a giant lumberman that he would one day visit his hometown. Although it probably wasn't here, it could be considered as fulfilling a wish. Guests. The giant lumberman king frowned. He did not believe he had the right to do that. Instead, he felt that the 2 behind him were a great cultivator who had undergone 3 heavenly tribulations, while the other seemed to be a legendary phoenix. They were more worthy of the Banyan Tree King receiving them. At this moment, a ripple appeared in the distance, spreading through the sea of trees. The Banyan Tree King's ancient voice rang through the surroundings. Esteemed guests have arrived. Forgive me for not going out to greet you. In that moment, all the demons and other folk in the sea of trees knew about Li Qingshan's arrival. The giant lumberman was shocked. In his memory, only the successive kings of Southern Yu would receive such a courteous reception when they arrived at the Sea of Trees for the first time after ascending to the throne. Li Qingshan shook his head with a smile. You're so polite. I'm afraid I won't even dare to enter. Ha 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 ha, I'm just afraid that I'm not a good host. Please don't take offense, little friend Qingshan. The Banyan Tree King laughed heartily. Although he knew about Li Qingshan's personality, he still felt very relieved when he saw that his attitude was the same as before, without any change. If there's no fine wine, please don't take offense. Li Qingshan also laughed heartily. Then slow down a little. I'll definitely let you drink to your heart's content. Since you're an esteemed guest of the Tree King, please come and have a drink. The giant lumberman king revealed a warm and friendly smile and raised his hand in invitation. All right. Li Qingshan took a step and entered the sea of trees, arriving in the kingdom of the giant lumberjacks. With a boom, a huge object smashed in front of Li Qingshan. It was over 3 meters tall and was engraved with many simple patterns. The giant lumberman king sat with his legs crossed, holding a similar object in his hand. It was actually a wine cup carved from wood. Faint, green alcohol rippled within it, giving off a heavy fragrance. This is solid wood wine, an excellent brew that only the giant lumberjacks have. You can't drink it anywhere else. Please, fellow Taoist. The giant lumberman king finished speaking and drank the wine in one gulp. He then said meaningfully, if you can't finish it, just have a taste. There's still a long way to go to Towering Sky City. If the Tree King wanted to treat him with great hospitality, he would definitely not neglect it. However, he was a little curious and unwilling to accept it. He wanted to see how great Li Qingshan was. The other giant lumberjacks also did not remain silent. Some urged, drink, drink. If you don't finish it, then it'll be our fault for not being a good host, and we won't be able to answer to the Tree King. After this cup, there are still 3 more cups. Others advised, you're so small, how can you drink so much wine? If you can't finish it, then forget it. Don't force yourself. I'll drink. The little phoenix flew towards the wine cup. How can a son fight over wine with his father? Li Qingshan grabbed the little phoenix's wings and kicked the bottom of the huge wine cup. The light green wine immediately poured down like a small waterfall. Li Qingshan opened his mouth and inhaled. The wine flowed into his mouth, and he also drank it in one gulp. You do have some alcohol tolerance. The giant lumberman king was slightly startled. It was not because of Li Qingshan's drinking, but because the little phoenix just now had pounced at a speed that was even faster than an ordinary demon king. Even he did not have this confidence. To be treated as an honored guest by the Tree King, he was indeed not an ordinary person. Still far from it. Wine. The wine was filled again. Li Qingshan drank 3 big cups in a row, causing the surrounding giant lumberjacks to cheer. Only the little phoenix cried out in dissatisfaction, "I want to drink too." Bang! A huge wine cup fell in front of the little phoenix. He shouted with joy and directly dived into the wine. The other giant lumberjacks also joined in and drank to their heart's content. Li Qingshan drank to his heart's content until there was not a drop left in the giant lumberjacks' wine. The giant lumberjacks were all drunk on the ground. Just now, they would wave goodbye and continue on their way to sky-reaching city. The giant lumberman king watched Li Qingshan's figure disappear into the sea of trees and shook his head. He really did not understand. Suddenly remembering something, he cried out in pain, "Ouch, my wine!" The sea of trees was deep and serene and filled with mist, but it was also full of strange and dazzling scenery. Li Qingshan leaped from treetop to treetop, but before he could travel more than 10 li, a black shadow rushed out of the soil under the tree and blocked his way. It turned out to be a thin, dark-skinned man covered in scales and armor. He was a demon marshal of some unknown creature, and he carried a large bag on his back. "Have a taste?" The demon marshal opened the bag, and inside were thousands of colorful insects, some wriggling, some crawling, and some flying. It looked rather terrifying. "Sure." Li Qingshan casually grabbed a red-shelled insect and threw it into his mouth. With a light bite, the juice flowed out, but it was sweet and pleasant, even better than honey. He tasted them one by one. These insects were sour, sweet, spicy, and salty, each with its own taste. The little phoenix did not like it at first, but seeing Li Qingshan eating happily, he also couldn't help but come over to have a taste. Along the way, Li Qingshan came across countless other folk tribes, demons, and demons. They brought out all sorts of strange things to entertain him. Some even traveled over thousands of kilometers to receive him, prepared with alcohol and delicacies, waiting on the path he had to pass by. He basically received them one after another. Chapter 979. When it's time to strike, I strike. I charged through the 9 provinces in a flurry. As Li Qingshan traveled, his drunkenness turned into something else. His loud singing shattered the silence of the jungle, startling countless birds. Before he knew it, he had already traveled for 3 days and 3 nights. Who knew how much fine alcohol he had drunk and who knew how many exotic foods he had eaten? He passed by another great banyan tree, and his field of vision suddenly expanded. There were no longer any trees before him, only huge, intertwined roots that resembled dragons, forming a huge maze on the ground. Leaping onto the top of a tree and gazing into the distance, his vision was blocked by a tall, greenish-gray mountain. The mountain was uneven, but it gave off a neat feeling. Looking to the left and right, he could not see the end of it. Raising his head, his vision was blocked by the clouds, so he could not see how high it was. What a strange mountain. Li Qingshan said drunkenly. The little phoenix on his back was already completely drunk, crying out a few times in a daze. Along the way, he had passed by quite a few tall mountains, but this was the first time he had come across such a large, strange mountain. All the mountains and rivers he had seen in his life could only be regarded as dwarfs compared to this. That's not a mountain. Little and drank quite a lot with him, but his gaze remained empty. If it's not a mountain, then what is it? Have you forgotten why you've come here? Do you really think I'm drunk? Ha ha ha, just kidding. I've obviously come to Towering City to see the Banyan Tree King. When Li Qingshan reached there, he suddenly shuddered. He powered the spirit turtle's method of sea suppression and temporarily suppressed his drunkenness. His eyes narrowed, and he gazed upwards. His gaze pierced through the clouds, reaching high into the sky. His eyes suddenly widened. How was this a mountain? It was clearly a tree, a great banyan tree that blotted out the sun. It was where the banyan tree king's original body resided. He had been moving through the forest the entire time, and the great banyan trees were like mountains in the first place. In his half-drunken state, he actually failed to sense that he had arrived beneath the banyan tree king's feet, mistaking it for a mountain. What, you don't recognize me now that you've seen me? The banyan tree king's laughter came from high up in the sky, dispersing the layers of clouds and mist. The banyan tree king's majestic figure was completely revealed in front of Li Qingshan. A majestic presence surged forth. It was not the presence of the banyan tree king, his presence had also melded perfectly with the world around them, but the sensation of a behemoth naturally emanating, as if it was a heavenly pillar of legend that held up the firmament. Li Qingshan sobered up a lot. He praised, "What a great banyan tree king." The banyan tree king smiled and said, "It's just a superficial appearance. I'm not as capable as you, little friend. I've finally seen your true appearance. No wonder it's called Towering Sky City." Li Qingshan said. There were only a few people in the entire 9 prefectures who could describe him, who was 7,000 feet tall, as vigorous. Originally, he thought the banyan tree king should not be so huge since it had developed so many branches. It was even possible that it was the same size as other banyan trees. Now that he had seen it in person, who knew how many times larger it was? Only the great whale king he had seen in the South Sea could rival it. However, the feeling of length and height was completely different. 30,000 feet was only a few dozen kilometers on flat ground, but it was completely different when it was placed vertically. Even the highest peak in the world of Li Qingshan's past life was less than 30,000 feet, and it was on a plateau. It was not that tall in the first place. However, the banyan tree king before him truly towered over 30,000 feet. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have struggled to imagine a sight like this. "Why don't you come up? Don't tell me you've drunk too much and can't fly anymore," the banyan tree king said. "I'm coming." Li Qingshan unfurled his wings and flew up. Little and followed close behind. Having arrived several thousand feet in the air, he had just caught a glimpse of the banyan tree king's appearance. Li Qingshan raised an eyebrow. Sun vines. A colossal, golden vine wrapped around the banyan tree king. It was like a legendary golden dragon, shining with a faint, golden light. No wonder it seemed much brighter under the endless shade. Li Qingshan could not help but feel rather confused. The roots of the sun vines were directly inserted into the tree, absorbing nourishment from the banyan tree king's body. It definitely did not benefit the banyan tree king's cultivation at all, so why did it allow it to wrap itself around him? When he first met the banyan tree king, he had received 2 requests, which were to get rid of insects and to loosen the sun vines. He knew that the sun vines were an extremely vicious parasitic plant. They could absorb all spiritual energy and basically did not fear any attacks from techniques. If it was a branch, it could still be used for some defense, but who could oppose the banyan tree king in the center of the forest? Who was bold enough to oppose the banyan tree king? Let alone the banyan tree king's personal strength, Li Qingshan had seen no fewer than 7 mutant kings and demon kings along the way. Coupled with those who had yet to show themselves, the forest was basically impregnable. Though, if such a huge sun vine attacks, it'll really be terrifying. Li Qingshan thought. He flew to the top of the tree, and a grand palace appeared before him. The banyan tree king assumed human form, currently waiting before the palace. However, Li Qingshan's gaze landed on the banyan tree king's side. A woman hugged the banyan tree king's arm and rested her head on the banyan tree king's shoulder. She seemed extremely intimate. "Lover? Mistress? I didn't think he'd like that." Li Qingshan wondered inside. The woman was beautiful and enchanting. Her figure was slender and soft, with a resplendent smile on her face. Her golden hair draped down, and there was a beautiful sunflower in her hair. She seemed so radiant, but Li Qingshan instinctively raised his guard. He was reluctant to approach her. Suddenly, he understood. As it turned out, she was the sun vine, and the presence she gave off was clearly that of a demon king. Qingshan, are you satisfied with the reception? The banyan tree king approached him. The golden-haired woman followed him closely, remaining close to him the entire time. Extremely satisfied. Li Qingshan patted his belly and burped. He looked at the golden-haired woman and asked, "May I ask who you are?" "You can just call me Madam Tang. This is my Lord Tree." The banyan tree king was about to introduce her, but Madam Tang beat him to it. Her gentle voice was like a vine winding around him, and her gaze only glanced at Li Qingshan and little and gently. Even the little phoenix did not make her look at them for long. Immediately, she returned her gaze to the banyan tree king's face. Her face was filled with sweetness and attachment. Li Qingshan felt his teeth ache. A scene like this was rare even among human couples, let alone two demon kings. However, a hint of envy flashed across Little N's eyes. He did not envy the intimacy, but rather the stubbornness of relying on each other and never being separated. The banyan tree king seemed to be used to it. He welcomed Li Qingshan into the palace as he asked, "How does your journey feel?" "I feel great," Li Qingshan said sincerely. It was not only because of the good wine and delicious food, but also because of the unique civilization that existed in this forest. Just the different races of mutants that he had encountered alone numbered several tens. Although there was also hunting and killing, there was a sense of a natural cycle. Regardless of whether they were strong or weak, every life form had a place to live and reproduce. When Li Qingshan spoke of his thoughts, the banyan tree king laughed heartily. It was obvious that he was proud of his life. "However, you seem to have expanded too much. I'm afraid this is not conducive to ascension." "See, old man, I told you that you were wrong." Even this little brother who came for the first time could see the problem. "What good is this for your cultivation? What do those mutants and monsters have to do with you?" Madam Ting complained. "I don't live for benefits. Besides, if I thought like this 5,000 years ago, you wouldn't be here now." The banyan tree king smiled. His attitude was gentle and amiable. "But you already have me now," Madam Ting said. "Senior has a broad mind and a heart of universal love. It's admirable," Li Qingshan praised. Although he wasn't a person who loved universal love, he admired the banyan tree king very much. Moreover, he could be considered as a direct beneficiary of the banyan tree king's love. "You talk too much." Madam Ting glared at Li Qingshan in displeasure. "Don't be rude." The banyan tree king waved his hand and said, "I have something to discuss with Qingshan. You can leave first." "I won't." Madam Ting acted coquettishly until the banyan tree king frowned. Only then did Madam Teng reluctantly leave his body and disappear. The banyan tree king said to Li Qingshan, "I've let you see a joke. Senior is old but vigorous. Junior admires you even more." Li Qingshan teased mischievously. The banyan tree king shook his head helplessly and invited Li Qingshan into the main hall of the palace. "I'm not as great as you think. I'd rather give up on ascension to help the common people. This time, I invited you here because I have a request." "It's not a request. What does fellow Taoist need help with? Just tell me. If I can help, I will definitely do my best." Li Qingshan's expression turned solemn, but he didn't dare to agree. Although it was his principle to repay kindness and enmity, something that could make the banyan tree king request was definitely not a small matter. He could only treat it cautiously. Otherwise, it would be even more inappropriate to go back on his word. The banyan tree king pondered for a while and sighed to the sky, how can all living things not have requests? Even if it was a tree, it would still beg for sunlight and rain. When it gains spirituality and turns into a monster, its requests will be even more. Using my own strength to protect all living things is my wish. But since I've entered this path of cultivation, I naturally want to find a path to walk. But you should be able to see that the path I'm looking for is not to transcend the tribulation and ascend. Then what path is it? Li Qingshan asked curiously. Apart from transcending the tribulation, was there any other path to take? Since you've seen the golden cicada, did he use the well as an example and say that he wanted to jump out of the well? That's right. This is what he's looking for. Jumping out of the well is to transcend the tribulation and ascend to a higher and vaster world. Which cicada doesn't want to break out of the soil, break free from its shell, and spread its wings to fly? But I'm just a tree. I just want to protect this part of the world. Little Ant said calmly, although the lifespan of the demon race is much longer than that of humans, and the grass elves are much longer than ordinary demons, it's not endless. There will come a day when it's exhausted. That's right. It's not that simple to protect this part of the world. If it's a dead end, I'm afraid I don't have the determination. After all, I'm also one of the living things. How can I not have the desire to live? Longevity is the most fundamental pursuit of all cultivators. Then what should we do? You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.